How did a game about a tired, white-haired mutant taking monster contracts for coin become one of the darkest, most emotional fantasy stories ever made? How did a simple job, find the creature, kill the creature, get paid, turn into murdered kings, civil wars, human experiments, witch hunts, ancient prophecies, ghost riders from another world, and a girl who can tear open reality itself? And how did the one man who keeps saying, "I don't get involved," somehow become the person everyone calls when the entire world starts falling apart? That is The Witcher. At first glance, The Witcher looks simple. You are Geralt of Rivia, a witcher, a professional monster hunter. People call you when something with claws, teeth, curses, or way too many legs starts ruining their lives. You track it, you study it. You drink potions that would kill a normal person. You take out one of your two swords, and then you do the job. Steel for humans, silver for monsters. That is the rule. But after a few hours in this world, you start to realize something very important. The monsters are not always the ones with claws. The Witcher is a world where almost everyone thinks they are doing the right thing. Kings say they are protecting their kingdoms, priests say they are protecting souls, rebels say they are fighting for freedom, sorcerers say they are saving the future, armies say they are bringing order. And somehow, all of them make everything worse. Villages burn, innocent people die, non-humans are hunted, mages are used, children are sacrificed, and every time Geralt tries to walk away, someone pays the price. That is the real heart of this series. It is not about choosing good or evil. It is about choosing between bad, worse, and I am going to think about this decision for the next 10 years. Geralt is not a hero in the clean, shiny, fairy tale way. He is tired, sarcastic, brutally practical, and usually looks like he would rather be anywhere else. People call him a freak, a mutant, a monster. Then 5 minutes later they ask him to save their village. And Geralt complains, asks for payment, says he does not care. Then saves them anyway. Because under the white hair, cat eyes, dry voice, and endless Geralt cares far more than he wants anyone to know. And when the games begin, Geralt does not remember any of this. He wakes up half dead outside an old Witcher fortress with no memory of who he is, who he loved, who he lost, or why his name matters. He does not remember his friends. He does not remember his enemies. He does not remember the woman he loved. He does not remember the girl who was basically his daughter. But the world remembers him. And that is the problem. Almost immediately after Geralt returns, the fortress is attacked. A criminal organization breaks into Kaer Morhen and steals the secrets used to create Witchers. So Geralt does the only thing that makes sense. He takes his swords, follows the trail, and goes hunting. At first, it looks like a revenge story. Find the people who attacked his home, kill them, get answers. But this is The Witcher. So obviously, that trail leads to fanatics, mutants, corrupt authorities, racial conflict, secret experiments, and a city that looks like it has not had a good day in about 300 years. And that is only the first game. Because after this, the story gets much bigger. Kings start dying. The northern kingdoms begin to collapse. Nilfgaard prepares for war. Geralt's past returns piece by piece. And eventually, everything leads to Ciri, the girl who can move between worlds, and the one person Geralt would burn the entire continent to protect. What starts as one Witcher trying to recover his memory becomes a story about politics, family, destiny, war, and the terrifying question of what you are willing to sacrifice for the people you love. Today, we are going through the complete story of the Witcher games. The Witcher from 2007. The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. And the two massive expansions, Hearts of stone and blood and wine. No Netflix show, no 4-hour book lecture, just the game story explained clearly from the beginning. So let's go back to where it all started. Before the Wild Hunt. Before the Assassins of Kings. Before Ciri returns. Before Geralt remembers the life that was taken from him. We begin at Kaer Morhen, the dying home of the Witchers, with a man who should have been dead. The Witcher. The first Witcher game begins with Geralt already broken. He is found outside Kaer Morhen, the old fortress of the Witchers, half dead, with no memory. He does not remember his past, the people around him, or even how he survived. But everyone else remembers him. To them, this is Geralt of Rivia, the White Wolf, one of the most famous Witchers who ever lived. To Geralt, it is just a name people keep saying to his face. And Kaer Morhen is not a proud school anymore. It is almost empty. The age of Witchers is dying. Only a few remain: Vesemir, Lambert, Eskel, Triss, and now Geralt. But before he can understand any of this, the fortress is attacked. The attack comes almost immediately. Geralt has barely returned, barely started to understand who these people are, and Kaer Morhen is already under siege. But the important part is not the monster at the gate. The real threat is the people behind it, Salamandra, a criminal organization that came here for one reason: the secrets of the Witchers. They break into the laboratory and steal the mutagens, the formulas, the knowledge used to create Witchers. Not to protect people, not to hunt monsters, to build their own mutated killers. And for Geralt, even without his memory, this is simple. Someone attacked his home, stole the secrets of his kind, and turned Witcher mutations into a weapon. Salamandra escapes with the Witcher secrets, but the attack leaves something worse behind. Leo is dead. He was not a full Witcher yet, just a young trainee who wanted to become one, and he dies because Salamandra came to Kaer Morhen looking for power. That gives Geralt his first clear direction. He may not remember his past, but he understands this. These people attacked his home, killed one of his own, and stole something that should never leave this fortress. So the Witchers split up. Each of them follows a different trail. Geralt's path leads south, toward Vizima, a city locked behind walls, poisoned by plague, and already rotting from the inside. Geralt does not enter Vizima right away. The city is under quarantine, and the poor are left outside the walls to survive however they can. The outskirts are dirty, scared, and full of people looking for someone to blame. There is plague, poverty, superstition, and a monster called the Beast haunting the village at night. Here Geralt meets three important people: the Reverend, who controls the village through fear and religion; Abigail, a healer everyone is ready to call a witch; and Alvin, a strange child with powers nobody fully understands. At first it looks like a simple job: kill the beast and move on. But the longer Geralt stays, the clearer it becomes that the real problem is not just the monster. It is the people. The villagers decide Abigail is the reason everything is going wrong. The beast, the deaths, the fear, the sickness, all of it becomes her fault. But Geralt sees what is really happening. These people do not want truth. They want a sacrifice. Someone has to pay, and Abigail is easy to hate. This is the first real lesson of The Witcher. Killing the monster does not fix the village, because the monster was only the symptom. The disease was already inside the people. Geralt can protect Abigail, or he can let the mob have her. Either way, the choice is ugly, and either way, someone pays for it. The beast dies, but the world does not become better. It just moves on to the next victim. After the outskirts, Geralt finally reaches Vizima. But entering the city does not mean safety. Vizima is under quarantine, full of plague, corruption, and fear. And before Geralt can even start looking for Salamandra properly, the the city throws him into its filth. Literally, he is sent into the sewers, where a monster is killing people beneath the streets. Geralt kills it because that is what witchers do, but the sewers are only the first layer of Vizima. Above them, the city is even uglier. Guards, criminals, nobles, priests, and informants all have their own version of the truth. Everyone wants something. Everyone is hiding something. And somewhere inside this rotten city, Salamandra is still moving. Inside Vizima, Geralt's hunt for Salamandra turns into a city-wide investigation. He starts asking questions, following rumors, and talking to anyone who might know where the stolen Witcher secrets went. But Vizima is not a city where people give answers for free. Everyone wants something. Everyone has a secret, and almost everyone is lying. The trail leads through the temple quarter, through guards, prisoners, merchants, criminals, and informants. Piece by piece, Geralt begins to understand that Salamandra is not just hiding in the city. They are protected by it. They have money, contacts, laboratories, and people willing to look the other way. And behind it all are the same names from Kaer Morhen, the professor and Azor Javed. The deeper Geralt digs, the clearer it becomes. Salamandra is not just hiding in Vizima. Salamandra is working inside it. They have criminals on the streets, contacts in the city, and enough money to keep people quiet. What they stole from Kaer Morhen was not just information. It was a way to create power. Mutagens, experiments, modified bodies, soldiers who do not need to be loyal, only useful. And the men behind it are still ahead of Geralt. The professor, Azor Javed, the same people who attacked Kaer Morhen, are now using Vizima as their hunting ground. So Geralt keeps following the trail, one corrupt lead at a time. But Salamandra is not the only problem in Vizima. The city is already close to exploding. Humans blame non-humans. Non-humans hate humans, and both sides are running out of patience. On one side is the Order of the Flaming Rose, knights who talk about peace, protection, and order. On the other side are the Scoia'tael, elves and dwarves, who have been pushed so far that violence starts looking like the only answer left. Geralt does not want this fight. He is here for Salamandra. But Vizima does not let anyone stay neutral for long. Every conversation, every favor, every small choice starts pulling him toward one side or the other. And then there is Alvin. At first, he seems like just another victim of this broken city, a scared child with powers he cannot control. But Alvin is different. He sees things he should not see. He knows things he should not know. And every time his power appears, the story gets stranger. To Triss, Alvin is someone who needs protection. To others, he is a weapon waiting to be used. To Geralt, he is just a child caught in the middle of adults who keep making the world worse. And that matters, because Alvin is not just a side story. He is the first game quietly showing us what fear can do to a child with too much power, and nobody stable enough to guide him. The swamp is not just another dirty place outside Vizima. It is hiding something older, ruins, magic, dead secrets, and things that were left buried for a reason. While Geralt is chasing Salamandra, he keeps running into the same problem. Everyone in this world wants power, but nobody wants to understand the cost. Salamandra wants Witcher mutations. Mages want knowledge. The Order wants control. The Scoia'tael want revenge. And somewhere in the middle of all this, Geralt finds a living reminder that some power should never be touched at all. A golem, not a monster born from hunger, not a beast acting on instinct. A weapon made by magic, created to obey, created to destroy. And for Geralt, that is the real warning. Salamandra is not dangerous because they are criminals. They are dangerous because they are trying to manufacture monsters. The swamp is not just another dirty place outside Vizima. It is hiding something older, ruins, magic, dead secrets, and things that were left buried for a reason. While Geralt is chasing Salamandra, he keeps running into the same problem. Everyone in this world wants power, but nobody wants to understand the cost. Salamandra wants Witcher mutations. Mages want knowledge. The Order wants control. For most of the first game, Geralt is chasing Salamandra without fully understanding himself. He knows what happened at Kaer Morhen. He knows who attacked the Witchers. But he still does not really know who he was before all of this. Then old friends start filling in the gaps. People like Dandelion remember stories Geralt himself has lost. They talk about his past, his death, the people who knew him, and the life that was taken from him. And for Geralt, those memories do not return cleanly. They come back in fragments, faces, names, voices, pieces of a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. That is what makes the first game strange. Geralt is solving a conspiracy in Vizima, but at the same time he is also investigating himself. At the tower, Geralt finally understands the trap. He was not only chasing Salamandra, he was helping them. Azar Jave needed Geralt to open the tower, and once the way is clear, he stops pretending. Geralt followed the clues, questioned half of Vizima, crossed the swamp, dealt with criminals, alchemists, rebels, and knights, but Azar was still ahead of him. That is what makes Salamandra dangerous. They do not just steal power. They know how to make other people open the door for them. And now, with the tower open, everyone wants a piece of what is inside. Salamandra, the Order, the Scoia'tael, mages. Everyone is circling the same power, and Geralt is caught in the middle again. The hunt for stolen Witcher secrets has turned into something bigger. A fight over who gets to control the future. Geralt survives the tower, but after this the investigation changes completely. This is no longer just about a stolen formula, a criminal gang, or monsters hiding somewhere in the swamp. After Azar Jave reveals how far people are willing to go for power, Geralt is pulled deeper into Vizima, into the part of the city where danger does not always carry a sword. Sometimes it carries a seal, a title, or an order signed in someone else's name. This is the clean face of power. Nobles, merchants, mages, royal agents. People who do not fight in alleys but can destroy lives with one conversation. Triss helps Geralt recover, but even she is not outside the game. In Vizima, everyone has a side, everyone has information, and everyone wants Geralt to choose. The Order wants him to stand with humans. The Scoia'tael want him to understand why they fight. The rich want stability. The criminals want profit. And somewhere behind all of this, Salamandra is still using the chaos to keep moving. This is where the Witcher stops feeling like a simple monster hunt, because the real monster is not hiding in a cave. It is inside the city, inside politics, inside fear. And Geralt is starting to realize that neutrality is becoming harder to survive. After the tower, Geralt is no longer only following Salamandra through criminals, swamps, and old ruins. The investigation now begins to touch the very top of Vizima, the royal family, Princess Ada, secret loyalties, and people who know how power really works in the city. In this world, truth does not come from monsters or dead bodies. It comes from careful conversations with people who never say everything directly. They speak about vows, protection, duty, and loyalty, but behind every word there is something else: fear, ambition, or a secret they are trying to keep buried. And the deeper Geralt listens, the more unstable everything around him becomes. Salamandra is still the enemy, but now their trail is connected to a city full of spies, nobles, soldiers, and old political wounds. What started as a hunt for stolen Witcher secrets is turning into something much larger. A path into Vizima's court, its corruption, and the forces quietly fighting for control. Now the pressure becomes harder to ignore. In Vizima, every side is gathering strength, and the Order of the Flaming Rose is one of the clearest signs of it. They speak about protection, law, and keeping the peace, but behind that language stands a growing hunger for control. The city is no longer just unstable, it is organizing itself into camps. At this point, Geralt becomes useful to everyone. The Order sees him as a weapon against non-humans. The Scoia'tael see him as someone who might understand why they fight. The wealthy want stability, the authorities want obedience, and the people behind Salamandra want the chaos to continue for as long as it helps them. No one is asking Geralt to stand aside. Everyone wants him on their side, whether he admits it or not. This is what makes neutrality so difficult in The Witcher. Geralt can try to stay outside the conflict, but the conflict keeps closing around him. Every ally comes with an agenda, every faction believes it is justified, and every step forward pulls him deeper into a city where choosing nothing is slowly becoming a choice of its own. By now, the conflict around Geralt is no longer only about Salamandra. All across Vizima and beyond it, the tension between humans and non-humans is getting worse, and what once felt like background noise is now turning into something much more dangerous. Every side believes it is defending itself, every side thinks it has already suffered enough, and every side is preparing for what comes next. The Order believes it is protecting the city. The Scoia'tael believe they are fighting to survive in a world that has pushed them out. The powerful want control, ordinary people want someone to blame, and fear keeps doing the rest. Salamandra understands exactly how useful that fear can be. They do not need to create division from nothing. They only need to move through a world that is already tearing itself apart. That is what makes this part of the story so important. Geralt is still hunting the people who stole Witcher secrets, but the world around that hunt is becoming bigger, uglier, and far more unstable. Step by step, the investigation is no longer only exposing Salamandra. It is exposing a city ready to turn its fear into open conflict. While Vizima tears itself apart, Salamandra keeps moving. That is the real danger now. The Order, the Scoia'tael, the nobles, the guards, the merchants, everyone is busy protecting their own version of the city. And in the middle of that noise, the people Geralt is hunting are still using stolen Witcher secrets for something much worse than simple crime. Salamandra is not just hiding anymore. They are experimenting, buying protection, moving through the city's weak spots, and using every conflict around them as cover. The more Vizima looks at itself, the easier it becomes for Salamandra to disappear behind politics, fear, and corruption. For Geralt, this means the investigation has to become sharper. He cannot trust clean titles, friendly faces, or people who claim they only want peace. Somewhere behind the arguments and alliances, Salamandra is still turning Witcher knowledge into power. And if Geralt does not reach them soon, the stolen secrets from Kaer Morhen will become something the whole city pays for. The deeper Geralt moves through Vizima, the less this city feels like a place with one clear enemy. Every street leads to another argument, another faction, another person trying to use the chaos for themselves. What began with Salamandra is now mixed with everything else. The Order, criminals, spies, frightened citizens, and people who speak about justice while preparing for violence. Dandelion pulls Geralt toward what looks like another strange episode in the city, but underneath it, the same pattern keeps repeating. Everyone wants money, protection, revenge, or control. The Order presents itself as the shield of the city. Hidden figures move through the shadows, and ordinary people are trapped between fear and spectacle. And then the mask drops. Behind all the talking, all the politics, and all the dirty little deals, there is still something monstrous waiting underneath Vizima. Geralt can listen to speeches, follow rumors, and watch factions blame each other, but sooner or later, this world always shows its teeth. This is why the investigation keeps getting bigger. Salamandra is still the target, but the city around them is already sick. And every new scene Geralt walks into proves the same thing. Vizima does not need much more pressure before it breaks. The werewolf incident does not end as a separate monster story. Once the blood is gone and the panic settles, Geralt returns to the only question that still matters. How does this connect to Salamandra? Triss helps him read the magical residue left behind, and that changes the investigation again. What looked like another brutal episode in Vizima's underworld turns out to be part of a larger trail. The magical device points to communication, planning, and distance. Salamandra is not acting like a gang that simply hides in basements and runs when trouble arrives. They are using magic, safe locations, and intermediaries to stay ahead of Geralt. Even the werewolf affair was tied into the same rotten network of criminals, traps, and manipulation. One of the men involved admits that the trap worked both ways, which means the underworld was trying to use the beast, even while the beast was hunting them in return. That is what Geralt understands now. In Vizima, nothing stays isolated for long. A monster case becomes a criminal lead becomes a magical trail, and the magical trail leads back to Salamandra again. The city keeps offering side stories, but underneath them all, the same organization is still moving through the chaos. Geralt finally activates Alvaro's portal, and the raid on Salamandra's base begins. Reinforcements flood into the cavern, steel clashes in every corner, and for the first time the people behind the attack on Kaer Morhen are not hiding behind informants or city politics. They are right there in front of him. But Azar Javed and the professor still have one more escape prepared. Azar hides behind magic, talks about destiny and the grand plan, then strikes Geralt with a spell. Triss' protection saves him, the attack fails, and Azar does what he always does, he vanishes through a portal, leaving the professor behind. Geralt chases the professor into the laboratory, through Salamandra's guards and the monsters they created with stolen Witcher secrets. The professor finally loses the fight, but Geralt does not get to finish him. The floor collapses, both of them fall into the tunnels below, and the Kikamor Queen rises from the dark. The man who helped create monsters is killed by one. Now Geralt has to survive the same nightmare. He cannot beat the queen in a straight fight, so he runs, uses Ard on the supports, and brings the whole cave down on top of her. Salamandra's underground nest collapses with its own creation inside. In the ruins, Geralt finds the professor's document of proof that Princess Ada was connected to Salamandra. And the moment he escapes the tunnels, Ada is already waiting with soldiers. Before she can silence him, Triss opens a portal and pulls Geralt away from Vizima. The professor is dead. Salamandra's base is destroyed. Ada has been exposed. But Azar Javed is still alive, and Geralt wakes up far from the city, on the lakeside at the beginning of Chapter 4. After the Naiad and the Silent Fisher King, Geralt finally reaches murky waters, and the first familiar face waiting there is Dandelion. Triss did not only save Geralt from Vizima. She dragged Dandelion out too, and somehow Alvin has landed in the same village. At first, this place looks almost harmless. There is no Salamandra laboratory, no royal conspiracy, no Azar Javed hiding behind magic, just a lakeside village preparing for a wedding. But the moment Geralt starts talking to people, the whole place begins to crack. Elena wants to take Alvin in and protect him. Julian, her fiancé, is not happy about raising a strange magical child. Adam is hanging around the village, clearly obsessed with Elena, and even the local talk about elves already sounds like another conflict waiting to explode. So Chapter 4 changes the tone completely. Geralt has escaped the city, but the story has not become safer. Alvin is back, the village is full of secrets, and under all the wedding music and peaceful fields, Murky Waters is already turning into a tragedy. Murky Waters looks like the first place in the game where Geralt might finally breathe. No burning laboratories, no Salamandra ambush, no royal guards waiting around the corner, just fields, wooden houses, a village wedding, and people talking like their problems are small. But the more Geralt listens, the more this piece starts to feel fake. Elena is preparing for her wedding, Julian is already tied into the village drama, Alvin is somewhere in the middle of it all, and every conversation makes Murky Waters feel less like a safe haven and more like a trap slowly closing. Then Geralt reaches the broken bridge and meets Mason Harn. Even here, the problem sounds simple at first. A man is trying to repair a bridge. But every night, something comes back and tears his work apart. In murky waters, even fixing a bridge turns into a monster problem. So Chapter 4 starts with sunlight, calm music, and village gossip, but underneath it the pattern is already clear. Alvin is drawing danger. Elena's wedding is not as peaceful as it looks, and the lake village is full of old magic, old grudges, and things that come out after dark. After the village problems, Geralt finally finds the man everyone around the lake has been talking about, another Witcher. His name is Berenger, and he is not here to greet Geralt like a brother. He is trapped in the crypt, surrounded by vampires and ghosts, and the first thing Geralt gets from him is not answers. It is another fight. Together, they cut through Bruxy, Alps, and Wraiths, and the whole scene immediately changes the tone of Chapter 4. The village looked quiet on the surface, but underneath it are old tombs, dead things, and another Witcher hiding from his own past. When the monsters are gone, Berenger finally starts talking. He is bitter, angry, and completely different from Geralt. He does not see being a Witcher as a duty or a profession. To him, it was something forced on him, another curse in a life he never chose. And then he reveals the part that matters most. Salamandra tried to use him too. So Berenger is not just a random survivor in a crypt. He is a warning. Geralt is chasing the people who stole Witcher secrets, but standing in front of him is someone who already knows what those secrets can do to a man. Berenger is what happens when the path breaks someone instead of giving them purpose. Murky Waters finally stops pretending to be peaceful. What started as a village wedding turns into something much darker when Geralt finds Elena again, not as a bride but as a Noonwraith wandering the fields. She still talks about raspberries, love, and Julian, like the wedding is about to happen any moment. But the truth is already clear. Elena is dead, and her spirit does not understand it yet. Then the tragedy gets worse. Her sister Selena is dragged into the story, and the jealousy that was hiding under the village gossip turns into murder. Elena's death breaks Adam, and revenge only creates another cursed spirit. Selena returns as a Nightwraith, another ghost trapped in the same fields, tied to the same ruined love story. So Geralt is not solving a normal monster contract anymore. There is no single beast to kill and no clean reward waiting at the end. The whole village drama has become a curse. A dead bride, a jealous sister, a broken lover, and a wedding that will never happen. Now Geralt has to do something harder than fighting. He has to make Elena understand that she is dead. The trail leads to old village magic, pieces of a broken mirror, and the kind of solution only this chapter would try not steal, but memory, truth, and a song for a ghost. When the sky over the fields turns red, Murky Waters stops feeling like a village and starts feeling like a nightmare. Elena is still wandering near the raspberry patch, trapped in the same thought: Julian, the wedding, the life she never got to finish. She is dead, but she cannot accept it. Geralt looks for a way to break the curse, and the answer is not another sword fight. Elena owned a magical mirror, but it was shattered, and the pieces are scattered across the fields. So Geralt hunts down the cursed brides guarding the shards, gathers the broken pieces, and has the mirror restored. But even that is not enough. The mirror shows Elena her name, but it does not make her understand the truth. So the final answer comes from something stranger: words. Dandelion comes to the fields at dusk and turns the curse into a poem, forcing Elena to hear what everyone else already knows. She is not a bride waiting for her wedding. She is a ghost. And when the truth finally reaches her, Elena stops fighting it. She forgives Selena, lets go of the life she lost, and the tragedy of Murky Waters finally begins to end. Toruvil dies, and Murky Waters dies with her. The village that began as a quiet escape from Vizima ends in fire, screams, and another massacre between humans and non-humans. The Scoia'tael are broken, the Order storms through the streets, and Geralt once again learns that choosing a side does not make the world cleaner. It only decides who dies in front of him. But the real damage is not Toruvil. It is Alvin. The boy is caught in the middle of the violence, watching another bloodbath unfold around him. And when the battle becomes too much, his powers explode. Alvin disappears in a flash of uncontrolled magic, leaving Geralt with no child to protect, no answer, and no way to follow him. After that, there is nothing left for Geralt in murky waters. Dandelion waits by the Fisher King's boat, and the lakeside chapter ends exactly the opposite of how it began. It started with calm water and old legends. It ends with a burning village, a missing child, and a war that has finally reached the capital. When Geralt returns to Vizima, the city is no longer just corrupt. It is openly at war. The Order and the Scoia'tael are tearing the streets apart, and Zoltan is there to meet him on the dike. He is not there for jokes this time. He is there to show Geralt what his choice has led to. Old Vizima in flames, friends on opposite sides, and Chapter 5, beginning in the middle of a civil war. After Murky Waters burns, Geralt's hunt finally returns to Azar Javed, the man who helped steal the Witcher's secrets from Kaer Morhen. But Azar is not just hiding anymore. He is showing Geralt what Salamandra has been building all this time. First, there is Rayla, a soldier twisted into something unnatural, brought back as another experiment, another weapon, another sign that Salamandra's science is no longer just about potions and mutagens. They are trying to manufacture monsters with human faces. Then Geralt follows Azar beneath the old manor, into the catacombs where the real work has been happening. Azar still refuses to fight directly. He mocks Geralt, disappears into the dark, and throws his creations in the way: mutants, failed soldiers, and finally the Koschei, one of Salamandra's most dangerous experiments. But the deeper Geralt goes, the clearer the truth becomes. Azar Javed is not the whole machine. He is only the man running the laboratory. Behind him stands someone with more power, more money, and a much bigger vision. And then the game finally reveals what Salamandra was really becoming. Not a gang, not just a criminal network, but the beginning of an army. Jacques de Aldersberg, the Grand Master of the Order, is using the stolen Witcher secrets to create his own new age. A world of engineered supermen, built from blood, magic, and corpses. After everything Geralt has uncovered, Salamandra is no longer the real enemy. Azar Javed, the Professor, the mutants, the stolen Witcher secrets, all of it was part of a bigger plan. The man behind it is Jacques de Aldersberg, the Grand Master of the Order of the Flaming Rose. And when Geralt finally reaches him, Jacques does not see himself as a villain. He sees himself as the only man brave enough to prepare for the end of the world. In his vision, the future is already dead. Cities frozen, people starving, civilization buried under the white frost. He believes humanity can only survive if it is changed, rebuilt into something stronger, colder, and obedient. But Geralt sees the truth. Jacques is not saving the world. He is using fear to justify monsters, massacres, and control. He stole Witcher's secrets to build an army of artificial supermen, and he wrapped it all in prophecy so he could call it destiny. The final battle is not just Geralt against another mage. It is Geralt against the idea that the future can be saved by sacrificing everyone in the present. Jacques throws visions, mutants, and the frozen nightmare of his prophecy at him, but Geralt keeps moving forward until the Grand Master has nowhere left to hide. Then the Wild Hunt appears, watching from beyond the world like it has been waiting for this moment. It asks for Jacques' soul, but Geralt refuses to hand over the ending to anyone else. This is his hunt, his choice, his kill. Jacques dies, and with him Salamandra's plan finally collapses. But in the silence after the fight, Geralt finds something that changes the meaning of everything. The amulet once connected to Alvin. The same boy who vanished in a burst of magic is somehow tied to the Grand Master himself. Geralt never gets a clean answer. Was Jacques really Alvin grown older? Was this all caused by the child Geralt failed to save? The game does not say it out loud. It just leaves the amulet there and lets the question hang. Then the story returns to Vizima. Foltest is alive, the Order is broken, Salamandra is finished, and Geralt is paid for saving the kingdom again. But peace lasts only seconds. An assassin attacks the king, Geralt kills him, and when the mask comes off, the truth is even worse. The assassin has Witcher mutations. So The Witcher 1 ends exactly the way it began, with stolen Witcher secrets, a conspiracy bigger than Geralt understood, and one final question. If someone is creating mutant assassins, then Salamandra may have only been the beginning. The Witcher 1 ends with Geralt saving King Foltest from a mutated assassin. Salamandra is destroyed, the Grand Master is dead, and for a moment it looks like the conspiracy is finally over. But the body of that assassin leaves one last warning. Someone is still creating killers with Witcher mutations. And The Witcher 2 opens by proving that this was never just about one attack in Vizima. Far from Geralt, another king is already marked for death. On King Demaven's ship, everything looks controlled: soldiers, servants, guards, even a pointless fight staged for entertainment. But that calm is the trap. The real assassin is already on board. Then the deck turns into a frozen killing ground. Guards die before they understand what is happening. Magic locks the ship in place, and one man cuts through the chaos with the precision of a witcher. His name is Letho, and when he reaches Demaven, the message of the second game becomes clear. Monsters are no longer the center of the story. Kings are. Demaven dies before Geralt even enters the game. But his death sets the tone for everything that follows: thrones falling, kingdoms panicking, and Geralt being dragged into a conspiracy where witchers are no longer just monster hunters. They are being used as political weapons. After Demaven's assassination, The Witcher 2 finally cuts back to Geralt, and the contrast is brutal. The man who ended the first game by saving a king is now chained in a dungeon, beaten, accused, and treated like the very thing he was trying to stop. The king is dead. Foltest, the ruler Geralt was protecting, has been murdered, and every piece of evidence points to the Witcher found beside the body. But Vernon Roch does not execute him immediately. He pulls Geralt out of the cell, sits him down, and forces him to tell the story from the beginning. That is how the prologue really starts, not in the present but in flashbacks. Geralt has to explain the siege of La Valette Castle, Foltest's war to reclaim his children, the battle on the walls, the dragon in the sky, and the moment when the king's killer finally struck. For Geralt, this is no longer just another conspiracy. It is personal now. Someone killed Foltest, escaped, and left him to take the blame. And if Geralt wants to survive, he has to convince Roch of one thing: the real Kingslayer is still out there. Geralt's story begins at La Valette Castle, where Foltest is leading the assault himself. This is not a clean military campaign. It is a king turning his own family scandal into a battlefield, trying to take back the children he believes are his. Geralt's job is simple: stay close to Foltest and keep him alive. But the siege immediately turns into chaos. The army breaks through the walls, Aryan La Valette makes his stand, and Geralt is forced into the kind of choice that defines this world: kill a proud young noble, or make him surrender and live with the consequences. Then the battle gets even worse. Geralt, Foltest, and Triss push deeper through the castle, but the sky itself turns against them. A dragon attacks, tearing through the siege and chasing them across the collapsing path. For a moment, all the politics disappear. It is just a witcher, a sorceress, a king, and a monster powerful enough to burn the whole war down. Foltest survives the siege, but the danger is only getting closer. The king came here for his children, and by following him to them, Geralt is walking straight toward the murder he will be blamed for. After surviving the dragon, Foltest finally reaches the reason he started this war in the first place: his children. For a moment, the siege almost feels over. The walls are taken, the dragon is gone, and the king is standing in the room he fought an entire castle to reach. But that moment of peace is exactly what the assassin was waiting for. A quiet monk stands near the children, harmless enough that no one treats him like a threat. Foltest lowers his guard, sends the children away, and in the seconds Geralt is too far to stop it, the monk reveals the truth. He is not a monk at all. He is another Kingslayer. Foltest is murdered right in front of Geralt, and the killer escapes through the window before the Witcher can reach him. Then the guards burst in and see only one thing. Their king is dead, and Geralt of Rivia is standing beside the body. That is how the trap closes. Geralt did not kill Foltest, but he was the perfect man to blame, a witcher, an outsider, already tied to the failed assassination from the first game. And now the only person who can prove his innocence is the assassin who just escaped. Roch listens to Geralt's story and realizes the obvious. Foltest's murder was a setup. Geralt was not the assassin. He was the perfect scapegoat, a witcher found beside a dead king, with no witness left alive to prove what really happened. So Roch makes a dangerous choice. Instead of handing Geralt over for execution, he gives him a chance to escape. If Geralt wants his name cleared, he has to get out of the La Valette dungeon, survive the guards, and follow the only trail that matters: the Kingslayer who escaped through the window. The escape is messy, quiet, or bloody depending on how Geralt handles it, but the goal is the same. He has to reach the docks where Roch, Vess, and Triss are waiting. And once he gets there, the story finally leaves the prologue behind. Geralt is no longer just a prisoner. He is a fugitive hunting another witcher, the man who killed Foltest, the same kind of assassin who killed Demavend, and the first real lead in a conspiracy built to bring kings down. After escaping La Valette, Geralt, Roch, and Triss follow the Kingslayer's trail to Flotsam, a dirty port town surrounded by forest, rebels, and fear. But before they even reach the streets, Iorveth Scoia'tael strike from the trees. Arrows cut through the fog. Triss holds up a magical shield, and the group barely survives the road into town. Flotsam does not greet them with safety. It greets them with a hanging. The whole town is gathered around the gallows, and among the condemned are two faces Geralt knows immediately: Danlion and Zoltan Chive. One talked himself into trouble. The other is being treated like an enemy because he is a dwarf in a town terrified of Scoia'tael. They are seconds away from execution, and Geralt has to turn a public hanging into a rescue. Lordo stops the execution, but not because he is kind. He wants control. He lets Danlion and Zoltan live, keeps his power intact, and makes sure Geralt understands that Flotsam belongs to him. After that, everyone regroups in the tavern. Danlion is alive, Zoltan is alive, Roch is still focused on the Kingslayer, and Triss is trying to keep the whole investigation from falling apart. For one short moment, it feels like Geralt can finally breathe and start asking questions. Then Flotsam reminds him why witchers are never allowed peace. A man bursts in with news from the harbor. Something huge has attacked. The Kingslayer trail is still waiting, but first Geralt has to deal with the monster strangling the town's trade, the Cairn. Flotsam barely gives Geralt time to breathe. He has just saved Danlion and Zoltan from the gallows, sat down in the tavern, and started piecing together the trail of the Kingslayer, when the town's next disaster rises out of the harbor. A giant tentacle smashes through the docks, sending workers running and ships shaking in the water. This is the Cairn, the monster choking Flotsam's trade, killing people near the river, and turning the port into a death trap. Before Geralt can even study it, another sorceress steps into the scene, Sile de Tansarville. She drives the creature back with magic, but she is not here for charity. She wants the Cairn dead, and she wants Geralt to do the killing. To prepare, Geralt follows the trail into the forest and speaks with Cedric, an elven hunter who knows the land and understands the monster better than anyone in town. With Triss' help, Geralt learns what the Cairn is, how dangerous its poison is, and what he needs to survive the fight. Then the contract becomes a battle. Geralt faces the Cairn at the river, dodging its tentacles, trapping them with magic, and cutting the beast apart piece by piece. It is massive, violent, and nothing like the quiet investigation he came to Flotsam for. But when the Cairn finally falls, Flotsam gets the hero it wanted. Geralt kills the monster, saves the port, and clears the way forward. But he did not come here for glory. He came for the Kingslayer, and with the Cairn dead, the real hunt can begin again. After the Cairn is dead, Flotsam celebrates Geralt like a hero, but the real story immediately turns darker. Triss disappears and the trail leads Geralt back into the forest where he finds Cedric dying. The old elf tried to help, but he paid for it with his life. Before he dies, he gives Geralt the only thing that matters now. Triss was taken, and the Kingslayer is still ahead of him. That changes the whole investigation. This is no longer just about clearing Geralt's name. Letho is moving pieces around Flotsam, using Iorveth, using the Scoia'tael, and cutting away anyone who becomes useless. Geralt follows the blood, the lies, and the politics until the forest finally gives him the man he has been hunting since Foltest's death. And when Geralt meets Letho, the truth becomes much worse. The Kingslayer is not a shadow or a rumor. He is a witcher, massive, calm, and completely sure of what he is doing. He killed Demavend, he killed Foltest, and now he is turning allies against each other because kings are only the beginning of his plan. For the first time, Geralt is face to face with the man who ruined his life. But Letho is not just another enemy to cut down. He knows Geralt. He knows something about his past. And before Chapter 1 ends, this meeting will force Geralt into the choice that splits the entire game: Roch or Iorveth. After the Cairn is dead, Flotsam should finally give Geralt a clear path to the Kingslayer. Instead, everything collapses at once. Triss disappears, Cedric is found dying in the forest, and before he takes his last breath, he points Geralt toward the truth. This was not random. Someone took Triss, and the trail leads straight back to Letho. When Geralt finally faces him, the Kingslayer is no longer just a rumor from Foltest's murder. He is standing right in front of him, a witcher, massive, calm, and fully aware of how much damage he has caused. Letho killed Demavend, he killed Foltest, and now he is using Flotsam's war between humans and Scoia'tael to cover his next move. But Letho is not just dangerous because he is strong. He understands people. He turns allies against each other, makes Iorveth look disposable, and leaves Geralt with a choice that is bigger than one fight. Roch wants revenge and order. Iorveth wants freedom for the elves and revenge of his own. And Geralt has to decide whose road will bring him closer to Triss and the truth. So he chooses Iorveth. Flotsam is left behind: Lordo, the gallows, the forest ambushes, the whole rotten town. Geralt boards the ship with the Scoia'tael and sails toward Virgin, into Aedirn, where the Kingslayer trail, Triss, disappearance, and the war for the north are about to become the same story. Geralt leaves Flotsam with Iorveth, but the road does not lead him straight to Triss or Letho. It leads him into another war. The ship carries him toward Virgin, a dwarven city in Aedirn where rebels, Scoia'tael, peasants, nobles, and dwarves are all gathering under one banner. At first, Virgin feels completely different from Flotsam. No gallows in the town square. No Lordo ruling through fear. No dirty port pretending to be a fortress. This place is older, stronger, built into the mountains, but it is not peaceful. Everyone here is preparing for a siege because King Henselt of Kaedwen is coming. And at the center of Virgin stands Saskia, the Dragon Slayer. She is not just another commander. She is the symbol of the whole rebellion, the person people believe can hold Aedirn together without kings, without tyrants, and without surrendering to Kaedwen. That is why Iorveth supports her. For him, Virgin is not just a hiding place. It is a chance for the Scoia'tael to fight for a future instead of just surviving in forests. But Geralt did not come here for politics. He came for Triss, for Letho, and for the truth behind the Kingslayers. The problem is that in Virgin, every answer is locked behind politics and magic, and that leads him to Philippa Eilhart. Philippa is the sorceress standing behind Saskia's alliance. She speaks calmly, but it is obvious from the first conversation that she knows more than she says. She understands the war, she understands power, and she understands that Geralt is useful. So Chapter 2 begins with Geralt caught between three forces at once: Iorveth's rebellion, Saskia's dream of a free Aedirn, and Philippa's deeper game. Virgin barely has time to present itself as a united rebellion before everything starts falling apart. Saskia, the one person everyone in the city believes in, suddenly collapses from poison. And the moment she falls, the alliance around her begins to crack. The people do not want speeches. They want someone to blame. The nobles, the peasants, the dwarves, everyone starts looking at Prince Stennis, the heir of Edern, because if Saskia dies, he is one of the few people who could still turn this rebellion into his own crown. What began as a fight against Henselt suddenly becomes a fight inside Virgin itself. Geralt is caught in the middle of it. He came here for Triss and Letho, not to judge a prince or hold together a rebellion. But Saskia's poisoning changes everything. If she dies, Virgin loses its symbol, Iorveth loses the cause he chose to follow, and Edern may fall before Henselt even attacks. At the same time, Geralt's search for Triss finally narrows. The trail points away from the city, toward the Nilfgaardian camp near the rear of the battlefield. So now Chapter 2 splits into two urgent problems at once. Save Saskia before Virgin tears itself apart, and find Triss before the Kingslayer conspiracy disappears behind Nilfgaardian lines. After Saskia is poisoned, Virgin stops feeling like a united rebellion. Everyone came here to fight Henselt, but now the city almost tears itself apart before the king even reaches the gates. The people need someone to blame, the nobles protect their own power, and Prince Stennis becomes the perfect suspect. But Geralt has two problems at once. Saskia is dying and Triss is still missing. The trail points toward the Nilfgaardians, but between Virgin and the enemy camp stands something worse than an army, a cursed battlefield, covered in magical mist and filled with the dead from an old war that never really ended. So Geralt has to stop chasing people for a moment and start chasing history. He gathers what Philippa needs, walks into the spectral battlefield, and is forced to relive pieces of the old massacre through the eyes of dead soldiers. The curse is not just fog. It is hatred, betrayal, and war trapped in one place, replaying itself again and again. When Geralt finally breaks through it, the road opens, but the war catches up immediately. Henselt's army attacks Virgin, and the rebellion has to survive the siege it has been preparing for since Geralt arrived. Dwarves, Scoia'tael, Saskia's people, everyone is thrown into the defense of the city. Virgin survives, but the answers Geralt needs do not stay there. Triss has been moved again, the Kingslayer conspiracy is still alive, and the trail now leads to the place where every side in the north is about to gather, Loch Muin. Chapter 2 ends with Virgin holding the line, and Chapter 3 begins with Geralt heading into the summit where the fate of kingdoms will be decided. In Loch Muin, Geralt quickly realizes that the summit is not just a meeting of rulers. It is a trap where everyone is hunting someone else. The Kingslayer conspiracy, the missing Triss, Saskia's curse, the Lodge of Sorceresses, all of it comes together inside the same ruined city. Then Geralt finds Philippa Eilhart, and the balance of power changes completely. In Virgin, she looked untouchable, calm, clever, always one step ahead. But now she is locked away, blinded and desperate. The woman who tried to move kings and rebels like pieces on a board has become a prisoner herself. Still, Philippa is not useless. She knows how Saskia is being controlled, and she may be the only person who can help break the spell. For Iorveth, that means saving Saskia. For Geralt, it means another impossible choice. Follow the path to Triss, or use Philippa to free the woman who became the symbol of Virgin. But Loch Muin is bigger than Philippa. The kings are already making their own deals. Radovid of Redania steps into the game, speaking not like a visitor, but like a ruler ready to reshape the north. While Geralt is trying to save one person, kings and armies are preparing to decide the future of entire kingdoms. Loch Muin was supposed to be the place where the north finally found order after the assassinations. Kings, nobles, sorceresses, ambassadors, armies, everyone gathers in one ruined city, pretending this is a summit about peace, borders, and the future of the kingdoms. But the truth destroys the room before any peace can be made. Radovid has Philippa imprisoned and blinded. The rulers argue over who gets Temeria, who controls Edern, and who gets blamed for the chaos. Then Shillard steps forward and turns the summit into an accusation. He exposes the Lodge of Sorceresses and brings out Letho as proof that the murders of kings were never random. And Letho confirms what Geralt has been chasing since the beginning. Demaven died by his hand. Foltest died by his hand. The Kingslayer is no longer a rumor, no longer a shadow in the forest, no longer just the man who framed Geralt. He is standing in front of the rulers of the North, and his confession blows the whole political game apart. Then the summit collapses into chaos. Sorceresses turn on each other, soldiers move in, and before anyone can control the situation, the dragon attacks. Fire tears through Loch Muin, the rulers scatter, and all the speeches about power disappear under wings, claws, and flame. Geralt goes after the dragon, but this fight is not just about killing a monster. This is Saskia, the woman who led Virgin, the symbol of the rebellion, the person people followed because they believed she could build something better. She was turned into a weapon by magic, used by the same people who claimed they were saving the North. So Geralt fights to stop her, not to destroy her. He survives the fire, wounds the dragon, and breaks the control holding her. And when the spell finally falls apart, the beast changes back into Saskia. The monster at the center of the final battle was never the real enemy. It was another victim of the conspiracy. Loch Muin is left burning, the summit is ruined, the kings are exposed, and the lodge is broken. Geralt came here chasing one assassin, but by the end he has uncovered something much bigger. A continent where kings, sorceresses, rebels, and empires all used each other until everything collapsed. Loch Muin is left burning. The summit is shattered, the alliance of kings is broken, the Lodge of Sorceresses has collapsed, and the city that was supposed to restore order has become one more ruin. After everything Geralt has fought through, the North is not safer. It is weaker, bloodier, and more divided than ever. With Saskia freed from the dragon's curse, the last pieces of the conspiracy finally start falling into place. Iorveth points Geralt toward the final loose end. Letho is waiting. But before that final meeting, Geralt finds Triss again. And the truth is more complicated than revenge would like it to be. Letho did not kill her. He actually saved her, first from the Nilfgaardians, and then from the chaos that swallowed Loch Muin when the summit collapsed. That leads to the final confrontation. Geralt meets Letho not as a monster contract, not as a faceless assassin, but as another Witcher standing at the end of a war he helped create. And Letho finally explains everything. He was working for Emperor Emhyr of Nilfgaard. The assassinations were never just personal murders. They were part of a plan to weaken the northern kingdoms, throw them into panic, and make them easier to conquer. The Lodge wanted to play politics through Saskia and the Pontar Valley. Letho used that plan as cover, but his real purpose was bigger. Demaven had to fall. Foltest had to fall. Chaos had to spread. The North had to be softened before the Empire marched in. And in that final conversation, Geralt gets something even more important than political truth. He gets back another piece of himself. His memories of the Wild Hunt return. He remembers Yennefer. He remembers that before all of this, before Kaer Morhen, before Salamandra, before Kingslayers, his real story was already tied to her, and to the hunt that tore them apart. So the last choice of The Witcher 2 is not really about politics. It is about Geralt himself. Letho has done terrible things. He ruined kingdoms, killed kings, and destroyed Geralt's life. But he is also one of the last people connected to Geralt's lost past. At the end, Geralt can kill him or let him walk away. Either way, the game ends with the same truth. The Kingslayer conspiracy is over, but the real war is only beginning. Nilfgaard is coming. The North is fractured. Yennefer is out there. And Geralt, after chasing assassins through 2 games, finally knows where his road leads next. The Witcher 2 ends not with peace, but with a wider horizon. One conspiracy is finished. A continent-sized war is about to begin. The Witcher 2 ends with Nilfgaard on the march. The Kingslayer conspiracy is over, but it has already done its job. The North is divided, the mages are hunted, and the Empire is ready to burn everything in its path. The assassins did not stop the war. They prepared it. And that is where The Witcher 3 begins, not with one murdered king, but with an entire continent already at war. But instead of opening on a battlefield, the game starts somewhere much quieter. Kaer Morhen, in a dream, with Geralt sitting in a bath like the world outside has stopped existing for a moment. For the first time in a long time, Geralt is not chasing a king's killer, not running from accusations, not being dragged through someone else's political game. He is with Yennefer in the old Witcher fortress, surrounded by memories of the people he lost. It almost feels peaceful, and that is exactly why it cannot last. The dream pulls him to Ciri. She is young again, training at Kaer Morhen, running through the fortress while Vesemir teaches her like one of their own. In just a few minutes, The Witcher 3 shows what this story is really going to be about. Not thrones, not assassins, not who controls the North. Family. Then the dream turns into a nightmare. The wild hunt appears, the warmth of Kaer Morhen disappears, and Geralt is reminded that Ciri is not just someone he loves. She is someone being hunted. He wakes up in the real world beside Vesemir, far from home, with Nilfgaard's war spreading across the continent and one clear lead in front of him. Yennefer is somewhere ahead, and if Geralt wants to find Ciri, he has to find her first. Geralt wakes from the dream beside Vesemir, and The Witcher 3 immediately pulls him out of memory and back into the real world. Kaer Morhen, Yennefer, young Ciri, all of it disappears. What is left is war. Dead soldiers on the road, burned villages, broken carts, and Nilfgaard already moving across the north. Geralt and Vesemir are following Yennefer's trail through White Orchard, but the road is anything but clean. The battlefield is full of corpses, and corpses always bring monsters. Ghouls are feeding where men died, and before Geralt can even reach the village, the game reminds us what Witchers do when politics leaves bodies behind. Then the Griffin attacks. It tears through the road, kills a horse, and almost takes a merchant with it. Geralt drives it off, but the monster escapes into the sky, and from that moment, White Orchard is no longer just a place to ask questions. It is a village trapped between war on the ground and a beast above it. In the tavern, Geralt starts asking about Yennefer. People saw her. They remember the black-haired sorceress, the smell of lilac and gooseberries, and the trail she left behind. But in this world, even a simple question leads through soldiers and authority. If Geralt wants real answers, he has to go to the Nilfgaardian garrison. And there, the commander gives him the clearest lead so far. Yennefer is connected to Vizima, and Nilfgaard knows more than the villagers do. But information is not free. Before Geralt gets what he needs, the commander wants the Griffin dead. So the search for Yennefer becomes a Witcher contract. Find the hunter, learn where the beast feeds, prepare the bait, and kill the monster that has been circling White Orchard. The game starts with family, but it moves through the world Geralt actually lives in. To find Yennefer, he cannot ignore the war. He cannot ignore the dead. And he cannot ignore the monster standing between him and the next answer. After the Nilfgaardian commander gives Geralt his condition, the path is simple. No dead griffin, no real lead to Yennefer. So Geralt goes back to what he knows best, not politics, not war councils, not kingslayers, but a monster hunt. He starts by finding the hunter who saw where the griffin attacked. The trail leads through the fields, past the bodies left behind by the war, and up to the beast's nest. There, Geralt understands why the griffin has become so violent. Its mate was killed, its territory was disturbed, and now the creature is lashing out at everything moving through White Orchard. Then comes the preparation. Geralt gets the buckthorn needed to lure the griffin out, meets Vesemir in the fields, and together they set the trap. The search for Yennefer pauses for one last White Orchard contract. But this is exactly the kind of work that shows what Geralt is. Armies destroy the land, people suffer, monsters come out of the mess, and the Witcher is the one who has to clean it up. The griffin attacks fast, diving out of the sky and tearing across the battlefield. Geralt and Vesemir fight it together, forcing it down, cutting through its wings, and finishing the contract the village could never survive alone. When the griffin finally falls, White Orchard's monster problem is over. Geralt returns with the trophy, But the moment the contract is done, the real story catches up with him. Yennefer appears in White Orchard herself, no longer a dream, no longer a memory from Kaer Morhen, but real, urgent, and already ahead of everyone else. There is no long reunion, no time to breathe. She has come to take Geralt to Vizima. On the road, the Wild Hunt is still close enough to feel like a shadow behind them, and by the time Geralt reaches the Imperial Palace, the story has changed completely. He thought he was chasing Yennefer. But Emperor Emhyr reveals the real reason she was looking for him. Ciri has returned. She is alive. She is somewhere in the war-torn north, and she is being hunted by the Wild Hunt. Emhyr wants her found because she is his daughter and the heir to Nilfgaard. Geralt wants her found because she is Ciri, the girl he raised, the child from his dream, the person who matters more to him than any king, empire, or war. So the search opens in 3 directions. Velen, where a Nilfgaardian agent may have seen her. Novigrad, where Triss might know something. And Skellige, where strange signs point to another piece of her trail. White Orchard was only the doorway. Now the real hunt begins. After Emhyr reveals that Ciri has returned, Geralt finally gets the first real plan of the search. In Vizima, Yennefer lays the map out in front of him and divides the trail into leads. Skellige has its own mystery. Novigrad may have answers through Triss, but the most promising trail begins in Velen, with a Nilfgaardian agent named Hendrik waiting near the inn at the crossroads. So Geralt leaves the palace behind and rides into no man's land. And Velen is not just another province on the map. It is the war at ground level. White Orchard showed the first scars of Nilfgaard's invasion, but Velen is what happens when those scars become the whole landscape. Bodies hang from trees. Villages are starving. Roads are filled with deserters, bandits, soldiers, and people who no longer know who they are supposed to fear more. The Empire, the local warlords, the monsters, or each other. Geralt came here looking for one man, but even reaching Hendrik means moving through a place where everyone is already broken by something. At the inn at the crossroads, the locals are tense, quiet, and careful with every word. Nobody trusts strangers. Nobody wants trouble. And trouble arrives anyway, wearing the colors of the Bloody Baron's men. This is Geralt's first real contact with the power structure of Velen. There is no king here. No law that feels clean, no authority that protects people. There is only whoever has soldiers, drink, land, and enough cruelty to keep everyone else afraid. The Bloody Baron is not even on screen yet, but his presence is already everywhere. Geralt keeps following Hendrik's trail, but by the time he reaches the village, he is too late. The Wild Hunt has already been there. The village is frozen in fear and death. Hendrik is dead, tortured before Geralt could ask him a single question, but Witchers are used to finding answers in places where people are already gone. Geralt searches the body, the room, the hidden compartment, anything Hendrik managed to leave behind before the hunt silenced him. And the notes give Geralt exactly what he needs. Ciri was in Velen. She crossed paths with 2 different leads. One points toward a strange witch. The other points toward the local warlord. Everyone is afraid of Philip Strenger, the Bloody Baron. So Geralt rides to Crow's Perch. The Baron's fortress is not a royal castle. It is a military nest sitting above a ruined land. Drunk soldiers, rough walls, smoke, mud, and men who treat the region like it belongs to them because, for now, it does. The Baron himself looks almost friendly at first, loud, smiling, full of stories, the kind of man who wants to act like a host before he shows you the price. And then Geralt learns the important part. The Baron knows Ciri. She was here. Not as a rumor, not as a name in Emhyr's orders, not as a dream from Kaer Morhen. She came through Crow's Perch alive, close enough for the Baron to meet her, speak to her, and remember her. But nothing in Velen comes freely. The Baron will tell Geralt about the girl he seeks, but only if Geralt helps him first. His wife and daughter are missing. His family has disappeared, and behind the drink, the jokes, and the red coat, the man is desperate enough to bargain with the only person who might be able to find them. So the search for Ciri turns into something much darker than a simple investigation. To learn where she went, Geralt has to step into the Baron's ruined family, and in Velen, family secrets are never clean. The Baron proposes an exchange. Geralt finds his loved ones, and the Baron tells him everything he knows about Ciri. The Baron begins to tell Geralt what he knows about Ciri, and for the first time the story stops being about tracks, rumors, and dead informants. Now we see Ciri herself. She wakes in the wilds of Velen, alone, wounded, and far from anyone who could protect her. The land around her is wet, empty, and hostile, but Ciri keeps moving until she hears a child crying out from the trees. And there, in the middle of the forest, she finds a little girl trapped above the ground while wolves circle below. The girl is Gretka. She is lost, terrified, and too small to survive this place alone. Ciri could keep running. She could ignore her. She is being hunted by something far worse than wolves. But that is not who she is. Even exhausted, even in danger, Ciri stops for someone weaker than herself. She draws her sword and cuts through the wolves. When Gretka climbs down, the two continue through the forest together. The girl talks about the Wolf King, about the thing that keeps people from getting home, and what first sounds like a child's fear slowly becomes something real. They find bodies. They find signs of a monster. And Ciri starts to understand that Gretka's nightmare is not just imagination. The Wolf King is waiting. Ciri prepares the old Witcher way, reading the corpse, gathering what she needs, listening to the signs of the creature before the fight begins. She is not a Witcher, but Kaer Morhen is still in her. Geralt, Vesemir, and the others taught her how to survive monsters long before the world started hunting her for her blood. Then the werewolf attacks. Ciri fights fast, almost unnaturally fast, cutting through the dark with the power that makes her more than a princess, more than Imher's daughter, and more than a lost girl in the woods. She kills the Wolf King and saves Gretka. And that is how the Baron's men find her, not as a helpless victim, but as someone who has already survived the forest, the wolves, and the monster inside it. The Baron brings Ciri to Crow's Perch. For a short time she is safe. She eats, rests, and becomes part of the strange little world inside the Baron's fortress. Gretka is there too, and for a moment Ciri is not just running, she is breathing. But this safety is temporary. The wild hunt is still behind her, and Ciri cannot stay anywhere for long. Then the story returns to Geralt. The Baron has proven that he really did meet Ciri. He knows more. He has the next part of her trail, but he will not give it freely. If Geralt wants the rest of Ciri's story, he has to find the Baron's missing wife and daughter, Anna and Tamara. So Geralt begins investigating the Baron's home. The rooms tell a different story than the man does. Broken objects, signs of a struggle, blood, hidden details, everything points to a family that did not simply disappear. Something violent happened here, and the Baron is hiding behind drink, anger, and half-truths. The trail leads Geralt to the Peller, a strange old wise man who understands curses, spirits, and the old ways better than any soldier in Crow's Perch. But before the truth comes out, Geralt has to deal with the absurd side of Velen too. The Peller's goat princess has run off into the woods. It is ridiculous, almost stupid, but that is Velen. Horror, comedy, blood, and mud all standing next to each other. When the Peller finally reads the signs, the truth becomes much darker. Anna was pregnant. The child died before birth. And because the child was not buried properly, it became a botchling, a cursed, hungry creature born from shame, grief, and violence. The Baron's missing family is not just a mystery anymore. It is tied to the thing he tried to bury. Geralt confronts the Baron, and the man's mask finally cracks. Behind the jokes and the red coat is a drunk, violent, desperate man who wants his wife and daughter back, but does not want to fully face what he did to lose them. The family did not fall apart in silence. It broke in screams, blood, fear, and guilt. At night, Geralt and the Baron go to the grave of the dead child. The botchling appears small, twisted, horrifying, but still not just a monster. It is the Baron's child. Geralt can kill it, but there is another way. If the Baron carries it home, names it, and buries it properly at the threshold, the curse can be lifted. The botchling can become a lubberkin, a guardian spirit, still bound to the blood of its family. So the Baron has to carry the thing he buried. Wraiths attack on the road. The curse fights back. The botchling twists and screams in his arms, and Geralt has to protect the Baron while keeping the child calm. Every step toward the house feels like punishment. The Baron cannot run from this, cannot drink it away, cannot give orders and make it disappear. He has to hold the consequence of his own life in his hands. At the threshold, the ritual is completed. The child is named. The grave is made properly. The curse breaks. And from the dead child, a pale spirit rises. The lubberkin is no longer hungry, no longer twisted by rage. It becomes a guide. Geralt calls to it and gives it one command: lead him to those bound to it by blood. And now the dead child becomes the trail to Anna and Tamara. The dead child becomes Geralt's guide. After the ritual, the lubberkin rises and leads him away from Crow's Perch, through the roads and fields of Velen, toward the truth the Baron tried to bury. This is no longer about what the Baron claims happened. Now Geralt is following blood, fear, and the path Anna and Tamara took when they fled. The spirit leads him to signs of panic, dead horses, broken movement, traces of an escape that went wrong. Anna and Tamara did not vanish peacefully. They ran from Crow's Perch, and somewhere on the road their escape was torn apart. The trail ends at a fisherman's hut, where Geralt finally learns what happened after that night. Tamara survived. She made it to Oxenfurt. But Anna was taken into the swamps, into the part of Velen where people whisper about old powers, witches, and things even soldiers avoid. The Baron's family is no longer one mystery. It is split into two paths: the daughter who escaped him, and the wife who disappeared into something much darker. But Geralt cannot stay buried in the Baron's story forever. Ciri's trail in Velen has another lead, the so-called witch from Hendrik's notes. And when Geralt follows it, he finds Kara Metz, not a village hag but a sorceress hiding from a world where mages are being hunted. Kara tells him something important. Before Geralt arrived, another mage was asking about an ashen-haired woman, an elven maid. Someone who knew Ciri, someone who tried to guide her, and someone who left his answers hidden in old ruins beneath Velen. Geralt and Kara enter the ruins, and almost immediately they realize they are not the only ones following the trail. The Wild Hunt is already there. The search turns into a race through darkness. Broken portals, drowned tunnels, monsters, old elven signs, and messages left for someone who was never meant to be followed. The deeper they go, the clearer it becomes that Ciri really passed through this place. The clues are personal: the swallow, Kelpie, symbols tied to her, and to the life she had before the hunt closed in again. Every sign confirms that the elf was trying to help her, and every step confirms that the Wild Hunt was close behind. Geralt and Kara fight through the ruins until one of the hunt's warriors stays behind to stop them. Cold magic, hounds, portals, and steel block the path, but Geralt breaks through and reaches the chamber where the elf left his final warning. The projection appears, pale and unreal, speaking directly to Ciri. He calls her Zyril. He tells her the place is no longer safe. And then he gives Geralt the next direction without ever meaning to: beware the witches of Crookback Bog. The Baron's family led Geralt into Velen's wounds. Kara's ruins lead him toward Velen's oldest nightmare. The elven mage's warning gives Geralt the next direction. Ciri's trail leads into Crookback Bog, to the witches everyone in Velen fears but still obeys. After the ruins, the search changes again. The Wild Hunt was close, Ciri was running, and the only clue left behind points toward something older and dirtier than kings, soldiers, or Nilfgaard. In Velen, people do not speak about the ladies of the wood like ordinary witches. They speak about them like a force of nature, cruel, sacred, and impossible to avoid. Geralt follows the trail of treats through the swamp, a path made for children, which already tells him everything he needs to know about this place. The deeper he goes, the more the war disappears behind mud, fog, rotting trees, and old superstition. This is not the Baron's world anymore. This is the Crone's world. The trail brings him to a group of orphaned children and the woman who watches over them, Gran. The children know more than she wants them to say, and when Geralt asks about the ashen-haired woman, the name that keeps coming back is Johnny. So Geralt goes looking for him. Johnny is not a soldier, not a mage, and not another corpse with a note hidden nearby. He is a godling, a strange little creature living in the swamp, and he saw Ciri. But he cannot speak. His voice was stolen, sealed away above the trees, and until Geralt gets it back, the trail stops with him. Geralt climbs through the swamp, fights off the creatures guarding the nest, and recovers Johnny's voice. Once he can speak again, Johnny confirms what matters. Ciri was here. She came through the bog, she was in danger, and the crones are connected to what happened next. Johnny brings Geralt back to Gran, and the mask finally comes off. The ladies of the wood are not village rumors. They are real. They speak through the swamp, through fear, through Gran herself, and they do not help anyone for free. If Geralt wants answers about Ciri, he must first serve them. The crones send him to Downwarren, where the villagers are being tormented by something ancient beneath the hill. The elf's warning led Geralt into the bog, but the crones make one thing clear. In their swamp, every answer has a price. The crones finally show Geralt what happened after Ciri reached Crookback Bog. She was wounded, exhausted, and still running, but even in that state she understood the danger almost immediately. The swamp was not shelter. The crones were not saviors. They were predators, and Ciri was something they wanted to use. When the memory begins, Ciri is already trapped inside the nightmare of Velen. The wild hunt is closing in, the crones are reaching for her, and the only thing left is movement. She fights her way through the bog, cutting down drowners, hounds, and anything standing between her and escape. This is not the confident Ciri from Crow's Perch anymore. This is Ciri cornered, wounded, and surviving by pure speed. She escapes the swamp, but Geralt still does not find her. He only gets another piece of the path. Ciri was here. She survived. She ran, and the crones failed to keep her. But Velen is not done with Geralt yet, because the Baron's story still has one last debt. Geralt returns to Crow's Perch with the truth about Anna and Tamara. The Baron's family is broken beyond repair, but he finally gives Geralt the rest of what he knows. He remembers Ciri not as a rumor, but as the young woman who stayed under his roof, raced him, fought beside him, and then vanished when danger found her again. In the last part of the Baron's memory, Ciri is forced back into violence. A basilisk attacks, the Baron is nearly killed, and Ciri uses her power to save him. But the moment she unleashes that power, she exposes herself. The wild hunt can feel her again. That is why she had to leave Crow's Perch. Every safe place becomes dangerous the second Ciri stays too long. So Geralt reaches the end of Velen's trail. The Baron gave him what he could. The crones gave him a warning. Kara's ruins gave him proof that the wild hunt was close. But Ciri herself is already gone, and the next major lead is no longer in the mud and swamps of Velen. It is in Novigrad. Compared to Velen, Novigrad looks alive: walls, markets, temples, crowds, money, noise. But the city is not safer. It is just better at hiding the rot. Mages are being burned in the streets, witch hunters are growing stronger, and anyone connected to magic has learned to disappear. If Geralt wants answers here, he needs Triss. Finding her is not simple. Triss is no longer the powerful court sorceress standing beside kings. She is hiding, surviving, and helping other mages escape while the city turns against them. To reach her, Geralt has to move through beggars, thieves, secret entrances, and the criminal world of the Putrid Grove. Novigrad has its own rulers, and they do not wear crowns. Through Triss, Geralt's search shifts again. Ciri may have come to Novigrad looking for someone who could help her, Dandelion. But Dandelion is missing too, and the only person who might uncover what happened is a dreamer named Corrine Tilly. That leads Geralt into a supposedly haunted house. Inside, Corrine is trapped in sleep, tormented by dreams she cannot wake from. At first, it looks like another curse, another spirit, another dark Novigrad mystery. Geralt follows the clues through the house, the doll, the attic, the childlike tricks, until the truth becomes stranger and smaller than expected. The haunting is not a demon. It is Sarah, a godling, hiding in the house and playing with nightmares like they are toys. And that is where Geralt finds the next strange piece of Ciri's trail. Not in a battlefield, not in a swamp, not in an imperial palace, but in a dark little room with a creature who thinks scary dreams are fun. Sarah is not the monster Novigrad imagined. The haunted house is not haunted by a demon, a curse, or some ancient evil. It is only a godling hiding in the walls, playing with dreams because she is afraid of losing the only home she has. Geralt does not need to kill her or drive her out. He makes a deal. Sarah wakes Corrine Tilly. Corrine survives the nightmare, and the search for Ciri finally moves forward again. At the Golden Sturgeon, Corrine looks into Geralt's memories and follows Ciri's trail through dreams. What she finds is not a location, not a corpse, not another Imperial lead, but a person. Dandelion. That changes everything. Ciri was not just hiding in Novigrad. She found Dandelion, and if anyone in the city could accidentally drag himself into a dangerous plan, it would be him. Geralt goes to the Rosemary in time, expecting answers, but instead finds Zoltan throwing out squatters and trying to clean up the disaster Dandelion left behind. The place should have been music, wine, noise, and stories. Instead, it is empty, damaged, and full of signs that Dandelion vanished in the middle of something much bigger than another romance. Geralt and Zoltan search through Dandelion's things, and the trail becomes exactly what anyone would expect from him. A list of women, meetings, half-truths, dramatic promises, and names that might mean nothing or everything. So Geralt walks through Novigrad, chasing Dandelion through the lives he touched. Old lovers, noble houses, sword lessons, debt collectors, secret meetings, and the same pattern in every conversation. Dandelion was nervous. He was hiding something, and he was involved with someone important. But the real answer is not on the list. Her name is Priscilla. At the Kingfisher, Geralt finally sees her perform. For a few minutes, Novigrad stops being witch hunters, crime bosses, burning pyres, and back alleys. The room goes quiet, and Priscilla's song turns Geralt's past into something almost peaceful. But once the song ends, the search becomes dangerous again. Priscilla confirms that Dandelion was helping Ciri. Whatever they were planning pulled them into Novigrad's criminal underworld. And the name that matters now is not another lover, not another witness, and not another dreamer. It is Whoreson Jr. To find him, Geralt has to step into the part of Novigrad that does not answer to temples, witch hunters, or merchants. He goes to the bathhouse, where the real rulers of the city meet behind closed doors. Siggy Reuven, Cleaver, the king of beggars, and the men who divide Novigrad between themselves. But Whoreson Jr. has already made his move. His men attack the bathhouse, turning a criminal meeting into a bloodbath. Junior is not just another gang leader anymore. He is unstable, violent, and dangerous enough to attack the same people who once stood beside him. After the attack, Siggy Reuven pulls Geralt aside and drops the mask. He is not just a crime boss. He is Dijkstra, the old Redanian spymaster, a man who used to move kings like pieces on a board. And now someone has robbed him. That theft matters because Dijkstra's stolen treasure may be tied to the same chain of events that swallowed Dandelion and Ciri. Geralt follows him under the bathhouse, into the tunnels and hidden chambers beneath Novigrad. The search turns from missing Bard to gang war, and from gang war to a carefully planned robbery. Broken walls, sewer access, magical traces, and a vault that should never have been touched. Then Geralt meets the guard who was supposed to protect it. Bart, a rock troll loyal to Dijkstra, confused by what happened and standing in the middle of a crime he does not fully understand. Bart is not the mastermind. He is not the thief. He is just the creature left behind when someone smarter used tunnels, magic, and planning to take everything from under Dijkstra's nose. Dandelion led to Priscilla. Priscilla led to Whoreson Jr. Whoreson's chaos led to Dijkstra. And Dijkstra's stolen treasure points toward the larger plan Dandelion and Ciri were trying to pull off before everything collapsed. Under the bathhouse, Geralt finally sees the crime that pulled Dijkstra into the same chain of events as Dandelion and Ciri. The vault was hidden below Novigrad, guarded by Bart the Troll and supposed to be impossible to rob. But someone got in anyway. Through the sewers, through careful timing, through magic, and through a plan smart enough to fool one of the best spies in the North. Bart is loyal, but he does not understand what happened. He only knows that the wall broke, the treasure vanished, and Dijkstra is furious. For Geralt, this means the search is no longer just about Whoreson Jr. Dandelion and Ciri were part of something larger in Novigrad, a robbery, a rescue, and a plan that connected them to the criminal underworld, Dijkstra's stolen gold, and the witch hunters. Geralt follows the evidence through the vault and the sewers, but the trail eventually brings him back to Triss. She is the one who can understand the magical side of the robbery, and she is also the one person in Novigrad who shows how bad the city has become for anyone connected to magic. Triss is no longer protected by courts or kings. She is hiding, helping mages escape, and living in a city where witch hunters are turning fear into law. Before Geralt and Triss can push deeper into Menge's world, another urgent problem pulls them into the open. Albert Vegelbud is in danger, and the only way to reach him is through a masquerade at the Vegelbud estate. So for a moment, the story leaves sewers, torture chambers, and criminal deals behind, and Geralt and Triss step into a completely different Novigrad. Masks, music, nobles, wine, fake smiles, and danger hidden under expensive clothes. The masquerade looks lighter on the surface, but it is still part of the same city. Everyone is pretending. Everyone is hiding something. Geralt and Triss move through the crowd in masks, searching for Albert before the witch hunters can get to him. There are jokes, dances, drunk nobles, and even a rare moment where Geralt and Triss almost feel like they are not standing in the middle of a purge. But the illusion does not last. Albert has to be smuggled out. Identities are switched, the masks become cover, and the party turns into another escape. Triss is not just running from danger anymore, she is organizing survival. Every person she saves is one more life pulled away from the fires of Novigrad. After the masquerade, the search crashes back into darkness. Geralt and Triss follow the trail to Menge and the witch hunters. Dandelion is still missing, Dijkstra's treasure is still gone, and the same people burning mages may know where the bard was taken. To get answers, Triss has to walk straight into the lion's den, and Geralt has to watch the city show its real face, cruelty dressed up as order. Inside the witch hunters' headquarters, the masks are gone. This is what Novigrad really is underneath the parties and temples: torture, fear, locked doors, and men who enjoy calling it justice. Geralt and Triss push through it because they need the truth. Dandelion is alive. He can still be saved, but every step proves that staying in Novigrad is becoming impossible for Triss and everyone like her. So the search for Ciri has to pause again because Triss has her own crisis. The witch hunters are closing in on the remaining mages. Safe houses are failing. Names are being exposed. People are disappearing. Triss cannot save them one at a time anymore. She has to get them out of the city. Geralt helps her gather the survivors and move them through Novigrad's hidden paths. This is not an army. It is a frightened group of mages, alchemists, healers, families, and people who know that if they stay, the pyres will eventually find them. Their escape leads through cellars, streets, sewers, and monsters, because even freedom from Novigrad has to be bought with blood. At the harbor, everything narrows to one final chance: reach the ship before the city closes around them. Triss gets the mages aboard, but the escape also becomes a goodbye. She has spent this whole chapter fighting for other people, hiding her own fear behind control, and trying to save as many lives as she can before Novigrad burns them all. The ship leaves the dock, carrying Triss and the mages into the dark water. Geralt stays behind. Dandelion is still missing. Ciri is still somewhere ahead. And Novigrad, with all its masks finally removed, is still burning everyone touched by magic. After Triss leaves Novigrad with the mages, Geralt stays behind with the one problem that still connects the city to Ciri: Dandelion is still missing. The trail through Novigrad has already gone through Dreamers, Godlings, Old Lovers, Priscilla, Whoreson Jr., Dijkstra's stolen treasure, Menge, and the Witch Hunters. But every answer keeps circling back to the same thing. Dandelion was helping Ciri. Whatever they tried to do in Novigrad went wrong. And if Geralt wants to know where Ciri went next, he has to get the bard back alive. The problem is that Dandelion is locked inside a system that cannot be broken with a simple sword fight. To reach him, Geralt needs Dudu, the Doppler who can become someone else, and turn Novigrad's own rules against it. But Dudu is hiding, and the only way to draw him out is exactly the kind of ridiculous plan only Dandelion's circle would create: a stage play. So Geralt and Priscilla turn the search for Ciri into theater. A script is written, actors are gathered, lines are chosen, guards are hired, and for one strange moment, the hunt for the most important girl in the world depends on whether Novigrad's audience understands a performance. It sounds absurd, but it works. Dudu sees the message, reveals himself, and gives Geralt the final tool he needs to save Dandelion. With Dudu's help, the rescue becomes possible. The plan targets the convoy moving Dandelion, and Geralt, Zoltan, and the others turn the road into an ambush. The bard is finally pulled out of the trap, beaten but alive, and the moment Geralt finds him, Novigrad's long chain of clues finally reaches the point that mattered from the start. Dandelion tells what happened to Ciri. She came to Novigrad desperate for help, running from the wild hunt and trying to fix the problem that kept her from escaping safely. Dandelion helped her, Dudu helped her, and together they got caught in the city's underworld. Whoreson Jr.'s cruelty, Dijkstra's treasure, the stolen object, the betrayal, the chase, all of it was part of Ciri's attempt to survive long enough to keep moving. And in the memory, we see the truth again. Ciri was not helpless. She fought her way through Novigrad, protected Dandelion, cut through Junior's men, and kept running even as the city closed around her. But every time she used her power, she risked drawing the wild hunt closer. She could not stay in Novigrad. Just like in Velen, every shelter became dangerous the moment she stopped moving. So Geralt reaches the end of the Novigrad trail. Dandelion is alive. Priscilla and Zoltan remain behind. Triss has already left with the mages. The city gave Geralt answers, but not Ciri. It only proved that she passed through, survived, and vanished again. That leaves one major lead: Skellige. Geralt leaves Novigrad behind and searches for a ship willing to cross the sea. Even that is not clean. The voyage is expensive, dangerous, and filled with men who know that the waters around Skellige are not kind to anyone. But Geralt has no choice. If Ciri left a trail there, then the search has to cross the sea. The voyage does not last peacefully. The ship is attacked, chaos breaks out in the dark, and Geralt is thrown into another disaster before he even reaches the islands. By the time he wakes on the shore, Skellige has already introduced itself the only way it knows how: cold water, wreckage, death, and a land that does not care who he is. But Skellige is different from Velen and Novigrad. Velen was mud and hunger. Novigrad was masks and fire. Skellige is stone, sea, pride, old blood, and tradition. Here, Geralt is not walking into a city of witch hunters or a swamp ruled by monsters. He is walking into a kingdom grieving its dead king. At Caer Trold, the clans gather for King Bran's funeral. Jarls, warriors, sons, daughters, rivals, and allies all stand together for one moment before the question of power tears them apart. Yennefer is here too, pulling Geralt back into the main search and reminding him that Ciri's trail on Skellige may be tied to something dangerous. But before politics begins, Skellige says goodbye to its king. Bran's body is placed on the funeral ship. The sea takes it, the people watch in silence, and as the boat drifts into the fog, fire is prepared for the final rite. The Novigrad trail is over. Geralt has crossed into Skellige, and the next part of the search begins under smoke, cold water, and a burning king's ship. Skellige begins with fire. King Bran is dead, and the clans gather to send him into the sea the only way Skellige would accept, with honor, silence, and a burning ship. For Geralt, this is not just a funeral. It is a different world from Velen and Novigrad. No swamps, no witch hunters, no city masks. Skellige is stone, sea, bloodlines, old gods, and people who treat death like something to face, not hide. But Geralt did not cross the sea for politics. He came because Ciri's trail leads here, and Yennefer is already ahead of him. At the wake, while the Jarls drink, argue, and prepare for the fight over Skellige's future, Geralt and Yennefer follow their own path. She believes Ermion has something they need, the Mask of Ouroboros, an ancient artifact that can reveal echoes of the past. If Ciri was here, if the Wild Hunt came through Skellige, then ordinary witnesses may not be enough. They need to force the past to speak. So Geralt and Yennefer steal the mask and head to the place where the magical explosion happened. The land itself is scarred, twisted by power, and when Yennefer uses the mask, the dead moments return like broken ghosts. Geralt sees fragments, Ciri running, the Wild Hunt chasing, a village caught in the middle, and a young man named Escajal who helped her when no one else could. The vision leads them to Lafont, but by the time Geralt arrives, the village is already a wound. The Wild Hunt attacked. People died. The survivors remember Ciri, but the clearest witness is gone. Escajal, the boy who helped her, is dead, branded a coward by his own people because he ran from the hunt and no one understood why. Yennefer refuses to stop there. The trail leads into Freya's garden, a sacred place that has already been damaged by curses, monsters, and violence. Geralt cuts through the nightmare around it, follows the last pieces of Escajal's path, and finds what is left of him. But Escajal cannot answer anymore. Not naturally. So Yennefer does something brutal. She tears the truth out of the dead. The ritual is ugly, painful, and completely against the peace Skellige tries to give its fallen, but it works. Escajal speaks. He remembers Ciri arriving in the village, wounded and exhausted. He remembers helping her. He remembers the Wild Hunt coming for her again. And he remembers one detail that changes everything. Ciri was not alone. She had someone with her, a strange, deformed creature. Not a monster chasing her. Not an enemy. A companion. Something so unusual that once Geralt hears it, pieces from the entire search begin to connect. Because Geralt has seen that creature before. Back in Velen at Crow's Perch, the Bloody Baron had a strange little being in his yard. Everyone treated it like a joke, a cursed pet, a useless ugly thing won in some deal or game. But now Geralt realizes it may be the most important clue he has found since the search began. Ciri crossed Velen. Ciri passed through Novigrad. Ciri came to Skellige. And somewhere along the way this creature was with her. So Geralt leaves Skellige with a new target. Not a king, not a mage, not a criminal boss, not a witch in a swamp. Uma, the ugliest, strangest creature in Crow's Perch, may be the key to finding Ciri. Geralt finally returns to Crow's Perch for the strangest clue in the entire search. After Velen, Novigrad, and Skellige, after every dead witness, every broken memory, every trail that ended one step too late, the answer points back to something everyone ignored. Uma. The ugly little creature the Baron kept in his yard, mocked, traded, and treated like a joke. But now Geralt knows Uma was with Ciri. And if that creature was close to her, then he may be the most important witness left alive. So Geralt takes Uma away from Crow's Perch and brings him to the only place where this kind of curse might be broken, Kaer Morhen. The journey back to the Witcher fortress feels like the story closing in on itself. The game began with a dream of Kaer Morhen, Ciri training there as a child, Geralt remembering the family he lost. Now he returns for real, carrying the one clue that might finally lead him back to her. But Uma is not just deformed. He is cursed. Yennefer understands that immediately. Whatever happened to him was powerful, layered, and deliberately hidden. This is not a simple spell. Someone trapped a person inside that body and buried the truth under magic strong enough to fool almost everyone. To break it, Yennefer is ready to do something dangerous. Use the Trial of the Grasses. For Witchers, that ritual is not just painful. It is the thing that remade them, poisoned them, killed most boys who were forced through it, and left the survivors changed forever. Vesemir, Lambert, Eskel, Geralt, every Witcher in that room understands what kind of risk this is. But there is no clean option left. If the curse stays, Ciri's trail dies with Uma. So Kaer Morhen becomes a place of preparation again. Geralt helps the others gather what Yennefer needs. Lambert is angry, Eskel is cautious, Vesemir is worried, and Yennefer refuses to slow down because she knows exactly what is at stake. Everyone in the fortress has their own reason to fear the ritual, but they all understand the same truth. If Uma can speak, he may tell them where Ciri is. The ritual begins. Uma screams, the magic tears through him, and for a moment it looks like they are killing the only clue they have left. Yennefer pushes harder. Geralt stays close. Vesemir tries to keep the process from going too far. The curse fights back, but finally the creature breaks open, not into a monster but into a man. Uma was never Uma. He is Avallac'h, an elven sage who helped Ciri hide from the Wild Hunt. And with that reveal, everything changes. Ciri was not moving blindly. She had someone guiding her, protecting her, hiding her through worlds and ruins and places no normal person could reach. But even Avallac'h could not keep her safe forever. The hunt was closing in, and Ciri had only one last refuge left, the Isle of Mists. For the first time since the search began, Geralt is no longer chasing rumors. He has a place, a real destination, somewhere Ciri might still be. So he leaves Kaer Morhen and sails into the fog. The Isle of Mists feels like the edge of the world, silent, gray, hidden from maps and full of things that do not want visitors. Geralt follows the strange light through the mist, past wreckage, monsters, and the feeling that every step is leading him toward either a miracle or the worst answer possible. He finds a small hut, guarded by frightened dwarves who do not understand what they are protecting. They know only that a woman is inside, asleep, unmoving and unreachable. Geralt pushes forward because after everything, after Velen's swamps, Novigrad's fires, Skellige's dead memories, and Kaer Morhen's ritual, he is finally close enough to touch the truth. He opens the door, and there she is, Ciri, not a rumor, not a vision, not a memory from someone else's story. She is real, lying in front of him after the entire world tried to keep them apart. But she does not move. Geralt kneels beside her, and for one terrible moment the whole search collapses into silence. He crossed kingdoms, war zones, cities, swamps, islands, and ancient magic to find her, and when he finally does, it looks like he arrived too late. Geralt finally finds Ciri on the Isle of Mists, and for one crushing moment it looks like the entire search has ended in failure. She lies motionless in the hut, cold and silent, after everything Geralt crossed to reach her. Velen, Novigrad, Skellige, Kaer Morhen's old ghosts, the Wild Hunt, the Isle of Mists itself, all of it seems to collapse into one terrible answer. He found her, but he found her too late. Then she wakes. And just like that, the whole journey changes. Ciri is alive. Geralt is no longer chasing rumors, corpses, memories, or half-truths from frightened witnesses. For the first time in the entire story, he has her back. But there is no peace waiting for them, because the Wild Hunt is still coming, and finding Ciri only means the real war can finally begin. They return to Kaer Morhen, where the old Witcher fortress becomes the last place in the world willing to stand between Ciri and the hunt. Geralt gathers the people who still matter, Yennefer, Triss, Vesemir, Eskel, Lambert, and every ally strong enough to help. There is no illusion anymore. This is not preparation for another search. This is preparation for a siege. Kaer Morhen becomes a trap not for Ciri but for Eredin's riders. The Witchers prepare the walls, set the field, make bombs, gather materials, argue, remember, and brace for the battle they all know might kill them. The fortress is more than a stronghold now. It is the last memory of the Witcher's old world, and the Wild Hunt is about to bring that world crashing down. Then the battle begins. The hunt arrives with frost, hounds, portals, and death. The fight tears through the valley and into the keep itself. Every defender has their role. Lambert holds, Eskel fights, Triss throws fire into the sky, Yennefer seals what she can, and Geralt throws himself straight into the center of the attack because protecting Ciri has finally become the only thing that matters. For a while, Kaer Morhen holds, but the hunt did not come only to test the walls. It came for Ciri. As the battle breaks open, Vesemir takes the role he always had in this story, not just a Witcher but the last true father figure in the old world. He protects Ciri when everything falls apart, and when the moment comes, he pays for it with his life. Vesemir dies so Ciri can live, and that death changes everything. Ciri's grief explodes into power. The force she has been carrying inside her, the thing every king, emperor, mage, and writer wanted to use, finally tears free in raw pain. The wild hunt is driven back, but victory feels meaningless. Kaer Morhen survives, yet the cost is too high. The fortress still stands, but the man who held its spirit together is gone. After the battle, there is no triumph, only mourning. Vesemir is buried with the quiet respect he earned long before this story began. The Witchers, Ciri, and Geralt all feel the same truth in different ways. The old world is dying, and whatever comes next will not let them hide behind walls anymore. Then comes the harder part: what to do with Ciri now. Geralt stays close to her, not as a tracker anymore, not as the hunter following a trail, but as the one person who understands how much she has lost. The Battle of Kaer Morhen ended the long chase, but it did not end the danger. Eredin still wants her. The white frost still hangs over everything, and the people around her all have different answers for what must happen next. Ciri wants action. She wants revenge. She wants Imlerith, the crones, and everyone who helped tear her life apart to finally pay for it. There is also the question of Emhyr. The Emperor still wants to see her, still wants to pull her back into the machinery of empire, power, and bloodline. Whether Geralt takes her there or not, the point is the same. Ciri is no longer just being pursued. Now every major power in the world is closing in on the final stage of her story. But before any of that, Geralt and Ciri need one thing the whole game almost never allowed them to have. Time to breathe, time to grieve, time to talk, time to remember that beneath the prophecy, the elder blood, the war, and the wild hunt, this story was always about two people trying to find each other again. That is what makes the aftermath so important. Geralt is no longer collecting clues. He is helping Ciri stand back up. And once she does, she knows exactly where the next blow has to fall. The road leads back to Velen, back to the mountain, back to the people who hurt her and are still alive. The hunt has been pushed back. Vesemir is dead. Ciri is alive. And now the search story becomes a revenge story. The next step is Bald Mountain. 1 week later, Geralt and Ciri return to Novigrad. The city looks almost calm from the outside, but everyone who survived this far knows better. Novigrad is still a city of soldiers, witch hunters, spies, burned mages, criminal deals, and old enemies pretending to work together because the wild hunt has become too dangerous to face separately. After Kaer Morhen and Bald Mountain, the story has changed. Ciri is no longer a rumor at the end of a trail. Geralt is no longer chasing shadows across Velen, Novigrad, and Skellige. She is here now, alive, standing beside him. But finding Ciri was never the ending. It only brought every enemy closer. Eredin is still coming. The white frost still hangs over everything. And if they want even a chance to win, they need one final plan. Novigrad becomes the place where all the broken pieces gather. Yennefer and Triss need the lodge. Not because the sorceresses can be trusted, and not because old betrayals suddenly stop mattering, but because the wild hunt cannot be fought with swords alone. Magic broke parts of this world, but now magic is also one of the only weapons strong enough to hold it together. That means rescuing Margarita Lochsantil, Rita, from the prison where Radovid's world has buried her. Geralt helps Yennefer break into the place, moving through guards, stone corridors, locked cells, and the filth of a city that calls torture justice. Rita is alive but broken by captivity, and pulling her out is not just about saving one sorceress. It is about proving that the lodge still exists, even after everything done to destroy it. Then comes Philippa Eilhart. Philippa is not someone Geralt can trust. She is too smart, too dangerous, too used to turning people into tools. But she is also powerful, and power is exactly what this group needs. Her return means the old games are not over, but for now, even Philippa has to aim her schemes at the same enemy as everyone else. At the same time, Ciri has her own unfinished business in Novigrad. She is not just waiting while Geralt and the sorceresses prepare. She walks the city with him, faces people from the life she had while she was running, and for once gets to move through the world not as prey, but as someone choosing where to go next. These moments are smaller than battles, but they matter. Ciri spent the whole game being chased, used, hidden, and hunted. Now she is standing in the open making decisions for herself. And then there is Avallac'h. He has guided Ciri, hidden her, and kept secrets from everyone around him. Geralt does not fully trust him, and he has no reason to. But Avallac'h knows the Wild Hunt better than anyone in Novigrad, and he offers a different kind of weapon, not another army, but truth. To weaken Eredin, Geralt has to follow Avallac'h through worlds beyond his own. Dead worlds, poisoned worlds, frozen worlds, places where the sky itself feels wrong and life has either vanished or become something unrecognizable. For most people, these places would be impossible to understand. For Ciri, they were part of the road she had been running through all along. The journey shows Geralt what Ciri's chase really meant. She was not just crossing kingdoms. She was running across realities. The Wild Hunt was never only a band of riders appearing in nightmares. They were a force moving between worlds, taking what they needed, destroying what they left behind, and now bringing that same hunger toward Geralt's world. Avallac'h's plan is to expose Eredin's crime to Gels and create doubt inside the Hunt itself. If the enemy can be divided before the final battle, then maybe Ciri has a chance. Maybe they all do. By the time Geralt returns, Novigrad's final preparation is almost complete. Margarita is free. Philippa is back. Triss and Yennefer are ready. Avallac'h has done what he can. Ciri is no longer a memory or a missing daughter or an imperial asset. She is the center of the coming storm. Then everyone gathers at the docks. This is not a clean alliance. It is Geralt, Ciri, Yennefer, Triss, Avallac'h, Philippa, Margarita, people who have lied to each other, betrayed each other, loved each other, used each other, and still ended up on the same pier because the alternative is extinction. Before they leave, Geralt speaks with Philippa. She is still cold, sharp, and impossible to fully read. Even now, she talks like someone always calculating the next move. But her words make one thing clear. The Lodge is not sailing because of loyalty to Geralt, or because the sorceresses suddenly became noble. They are sailing because Rita, Philippa, Triss, Yennefer, and Ciri are all caught in the same endgame now. The final pieces are on the board. Then the ship leaves Novigrad. The city that held Dandelion, Triss, Priscilla, Dijkstra, Whoreson, Menge, Sarah, Corrine, the witch hunters, the Lodge, and half the search for Ciri finally falls behind them. Novigrad gave Geralt answers, enemies, allies, and scars. Now it gives him one last thing. Away back to Skellige. The ship moves into open water, carrying Geralt, Ciri, the sorceresses, and Avallac'h toward the place where the final battle with the Wild Hunt will begin. The ship leaves Novigrad and carries everyone back towards Skellige. For most of the game, Geralt was always one step behind Ciri. He followed rumors through Velen, memories through Novigrad, visions through Skellige, and finally found her on the Isle of Mists. But now the search is over. Ciri is no longer a ghost at the end of someone else's story. She is here on the ship, sailing toward the final battle. The plan is no longer to hide from the Wild Hunt. The plan is to bring them in. On Skellige, the last preparations begin. Avallac'h knows that Eredin can be forced into a trap, but only if they find the Sunstone, an ancient elven artifact powerful enough to draw the Naglfar and the Wild Hunt into the open. That means one more search, one more ruin, one more piece of old elven magic buried under Skellige's stone and sea. Geralt works with Philippa to reach the Sunstone, while the others prepare the trap. At the same time, the group still needs Fringilla Vigo, another sorceress who can help hold the hunt when the battle begins. Every piece matters now. Every mage, every spell, every ship, every ally, because this time, they are not defending a fortress like Kaer Morhen. They are trying to force the Wild Hunt into a battlefield where Eredin can finally be killed. But before the final battle, Ciri has to face something personal. Avalak's laboratory reveals how deeply she has been studied, protected, manipulated, and feared. Even the people helping her have treated her like something more than human: elder blood, weapon, key, prophecy, solution. Ciri has spent the entire game being hunted by people who want to use her power, but the truth is uglier. Even some of her allies see her through that same power first. That is why this part matters. Ciri is not just preparing to fight Eredin. She is trying to decide who she is when everyone else keeps telling her what she is meant to be. Then the trap is ready. The Sunstone calls the Wild Hunt to Skellige, and the sea becomes the final battlefield. Ships move through the fog, sorceresses prepare their magic, warriors brace for impact, and the Naglfar appears like a nightmare coming out of another world. After all the dreams, visions, and warnings, the hunt is finally here in full force. The battle begins on ice, sea, and broken ships. Ciri fights Caranthir first, the navigator of the hunt, the one who helps them move between worlds. She stands against him not as prey, but as the one person he cannot fully control. Then Geralt takes over the fight, cutting through Caranthir and the hunt's warriors until the path finally opens toward Eredin himself. And then Geralt faces the king of the Wild Hunt. Eredin is not a rumor anymore, not a shadow in a dream, not the distant rider behind every disaster. He is standing in front of Geralt, armored, cold, and certain that Ciri's power belongs to him. The fight is brutal, moving through ice, shipwrecks, and worlds breaking around them. But this time Geralt is not chasing him. This time Eredin has nowhere left to hide. Geralt kills him, but Eredin's death is not the end. Before he dies, he leaves one last poison behind. Avalak has taken Ciri. The battlefield was only one part of the ending. The real danger is still above them, tied to the white frost, the force that has been hanging over this entire story from the beginning, older and larger than any king, mage, or rider of the hunt. Geralt reaches the tower, but Ciri already understands what has to happen. The Wild Hunt wanted her power because they thought it could save their people. Emhyr wanted her because she was his daughter and his heir. Mages wanted her because she was the key to impossible magic. But in the end, Ciri is the only one who can choose what that power means, and she chooses to face the white frost. Geralt cannot fight this for her. He cannot track it, cut it, burn it, or bargain with it. After everything he has done to find her, protect her, and bring her back, the final step belongs to Ciri alone. She walks into the light. For Geralt, it is the hardest moment of the entire journey. He found her. He lost her. He found her again. And now he has to let her go, not because he failed, but because she has become the one person strong enough to do what no one else can. Then the world goes quiet. The hunt is broken. Eredin is dead. The white frost is faced. And after all the wars, prophecies, betrayals, and impossible searches, the ending comes down to one question. Did Geralt give Ciri enough strength to come back? In the end, the answer is yes. Geralt goes to Emhyr and tells him Ciri is gone. To the Emperor, it sounds like failure. To Nilfgaard, it means the heir is lost. But Geralt is not there to explain the truth. He is there to bury the Empire's claim over her, because Ciri is not dead, she is free. Geralt later meets her quietly away from emperors, kings, sorceresses, and armies. No court, no prophecy, no throne. Just the two of them after everything, finally standing in a world where Ciri gets to choose her own path. He gives her a sword, not as a princess, not as Emhyr's heir, not as the weapon the Wild Hunt chased across worlds. As a Witcher. And that is where The Witcher 3 ends. Not with a king winning a war, not with an empire claiming its prize, and not with destiny owning Ciri's life. It ends with Geralt letting her become who she wants to be, and with Ciri walking into the world on her own terms. The Wild Hunt is over. The search is over. And Geralt, after 3 games of lost memories, dead kings, broken kingdoms, and impossible choices, finally saves the person who mattered most. Geralt's first story in Hearts of Stone begins exactly the way a Witcher story should begin, with a contract. No prophecy, no war council, no fate of the world. Just a notice, a monster, and a nobleman willing to pay for someone else to deal with his problem. That nobleman is Algierd von Everec. When Geralt arrives at the Garin estate, it is clear almost immediately that this is not the home of an ordinary lord. The place feels lawless. Men drink, laugh, threaten, and play with violence as if cruelty is just another form of entertainment. And in the middle of all of it stands Algierd, calm, confident, almost bored. He does not look desperate. He does not look afraid of the monster he once killed. In fact, he seems more interested in Geralt himself than in the contract. As if the job is only the first move in a game Geralt does not yet understand. The task sounds simple. Something is killing people in the sewers beneath Oxenfurt. Algierd wants it dead. For Geralt, that is enough. He has seen rich men, cursed men, cruel men, and foolish men before. Whatever Algierd is hiding, the monster still needs to be dealt with. So the Witcher follows the trail underground. In the sewers, Geralt finds Shani, an old friend, a medic, and one of the few people in this world who still tries to save lives while everyone else is busy taking them. She came there with soldiers, hoping to learn more about the creature's venom. But the monster has already turned the expedition into a massacre. The deeper Geralt goes, the less this feels like an ordinary hunt. The tunnels are full of bodies, poison, and signs of something far stronger than a common beast. Rumors speak of a prince turned into a toad, but in Geralt's world, fairy tales usually become real only after they have already killed someone. Then he finds it. The creature is enormous, a giant poisonous toad hiding under the city like a curse that grew flesh. The fight is ugly and brutal. No glory, no clean swordplay, just venom, mud, and survival. But Geralt does what Witchers do. He kills the monster, and that is when the contract turns into a trap. The beast was not just a beast. It was a prince of Ophir cursed into that form. Geralt did not simply complete a job. He killed foreign royalty. To the Ophiri soldiers who arrive after the fight, explanations mean nothing. They do not see a Witcher breaking a curse. They see a murderer standing over the body of their prince. Geralt is captured, chained, and taken onto a ship to be judged in Ophir. For once, the Witcher is not the hunter, he is the prisoner. And then when there is no sword in his hand and no way out, Gaunter O'Dimm appears. He is polite, calm, almost friendly, but everything about him feels wrong. O'Dimm does not need to raise his voice. He does not need to threaten Geralt. He simply offers him exactly what he needs most: freedom. A storm comes. The ship is destroyed. Geralt survives, but nothing from Gaunter O'Dimm is free. He marks Geralt's face and binds him to a debt. O'Dimm saved him from the Ophiri, but now Geralt must help him collect what he is owed. And the man who owes him is Algierd von Everec. Only now does Geralt begin to understand the real shape of the story. The toad, the prince, the contract, the curse, all of it leads back to Algierd. When Geralt returns to him, Algierd no longer seems like just a reckless nobleman. There is something unnatural about him, something broken. Death does not touch him the way it touches other men. Pain does not frighten him. Consequences do not reach him. Algierd once made a deal with O'Dimm. And now, before O'Dimm can take what he is owed, Geralt must fulfill 3 wishes in Algierd's name. But Algierd does not ask for simple things. He asks Geralt to show his dead brother Vladimir one final night of life. And he asks for the house of Maximilian Borsodi. Not gold, not land, not a sword. A dead man's night and a house that clearly means more than it should. The wishes are designed to sound impossible. That is the point. Algierd is not asking Geralt for help. He is forcing him deeper into a bargain between 2 men who both understand contracts better than any Witcher ever could. So Geralt begins with the first wish. With Shani's help, he enters the von Everec family crypt, a place filled with old blood, old pride, and old violence. The dead do not rest easily there. Before Geralt can reach Vladimir, he must face the remains of the family's past. spirits still clinging to the name von Everec as if death itself was not enough to humble them. And then Vladimir appears. Unlike Algierd, Vladimir is not cold. He is loud, arrogant, hungry for life, and furious that his time is over. He does not want peace. He does not want wisdom. He wants one more night, one more chance to drink, laugh, dance, flirt, and feel the world again. But a ghost cannot enjoy a wedding. A ghost cannot hold a cup, touch a woman's hand, or dance beneath lanterns. If Vladimir is going to live for one night, he needs a body, and the body he chooses is Geralt's. For one night, Geralt of Rivia will no longer belong only to himself. For Vladimir von Everec, life begins again with a face that is not his own. The body belongs to Geralt. The scars, the white hair, the Witcher's strength, all of it is still Geralt's. But behind his eyes is a dead man who has just been given the one thing every ghost wants and almost none of them receive: one more night among the living. And Vladimir refuses to waste it. Where Geralt is quiet, Vladimir is loud. Where Geralt is careful, Vladimir is reckless. He laughs, flirts, drinks, boasts, and treats every moment like a victory over the grave. To Shani, it is almost disturbing. She knows Geralt, and this is not Geralt. This is someone else using his voice, his hands, his face, turning the Witcher into a mask for a dead nobleman's final celebration. But this is Algierd's first wish. Vladimir must enjoy one last night. So Geralt's body follows Shani to a wedding. And suddenly, Hearts of Stone changes completely. After curses, contracts, monsters, chains, and deals with Gaunter O'Dim, the story throws Geralt into music, dancing, food, laughter, games, and ordinary people who have no idea that a dead man has just walked into their celebration wearing a Witcher's skin. For Vladimir, the wedding is paradise. He throws himself into every game, every drink, every joke, every chance to feel alive. He chases pleasure with the hunger of someone who knows the night is already ending. He is ridiculous, arrogant, and sometimes unbearable, but beneath all of it there is something tragic, because Vladimir is not truly alive. He is borrowing time, borrowing Geralt's body, borrowing a night that will be taken away as soon as the rules of the bargain demand it. And the longer the wedding goes on, the clearer it becomes that this is not only about Vladimir. It is also about Shani. She sees Geralt acting like a stranger, but she also sees the sadness behind the performance. The night becomes a strange mixture of comedy and melancholy, a dead man celebrating life, a Witcher trapped inside his own body, and a woman trying to understand where Geralt ends and Vladimir begins. But Gaunter O'Dim is never far away. When he appears, the mood changes instantly. The party, the laughter, the warmth, all of it suddenly feels small compared to the force that is truly controlling this story. O'Dim does not need to shout. He does not need to fight. He simply reminds everyone that a deal was made, rules were set, and the night belongs to him as much as it belongs to Vladimir. Vladimir's borrowed life comes to an end. The ghost returns to the dead, and Geralt is left behind with the consequences: Shani, the memory of the wedding, and the uncomfortable truth that every wish Algierd gives him will only pull him deeper into O'Dim's game. One wish is complete, but Algierd still has more. The next demand sounds even stranger than the first. He does not ask Geralt to kill someone. He does not ask for gold, land, or revenge in the usual sense. He asks for the house of Maximilian Borsodi. At first, it sounds impossible. How does a Witcher bring someone a house? Does Algierd mean an estate, a building, a deed, a family secret? Geralt's only lead is the Borsodi auction house in Oxenfurt, a place where wealth, pride, and old grudges are polished until they shine. Inside, Geralt enters a world very different from the wedding. No music, no warmth, no ordinary joy. Only collectors, bankers, nobles, rare objects, and people who hide greed behind manners. There, Geralt learns that the Borsodi family does not give anything away easily. The auction house is guarded, controlled, and full of people who know exactly how much every object is worth, except perhaps the one thing Geralt actually needs. When Geralt tries to push too far, Horst Borsodi has him thrown out like a nuisance. And that is when another player enters the game. A stranger approaches Geralt with an offer. He knows what Geralt is looking for. He knows where Maximilian's house is kept. And he knows that there is only one real way to get it, not by buying it, not by asking for it, by stealing it. So Geralt, the Witcher who usually solves problems with tracks, blades, and monsters, is pulled into something completely different, a robbery. The stranger lays out the plan. The auction house cannot be taken by force alone. They need a crew, a way inside, a way into the vault, someone who can break locks, someone who can climb where others cannot, and a way to weaken the Redanian soldiers who could ruin the entire operation before it begins. This is no longer a monster hunt. It is a heist. And somewhere behind the maps, the locked doors, and the stranger's careful words, Geralt can feel it again, the same pattern that began with Algierd's first contract. Nothing is simple. No one is telling the whole truth. And every step toward fulfilling Algierd's wishes brings Gaunter O'Dim closer to the moment when he will demand what he is owed. The robbery of the Borsodi auction house begins like a crime, but it ends like a family curse. Geralt came there for one reason, to fulfill Algierd's second wish and take the house of Maximilian Borsodi. But inside the vault, surrounded by gold, paintings, locked chests, and old secrets, the truth finally comes out. The stranger who planned the heist is not just a thief. He is Ewald Borsodi, Horst's own brother. And the heist was never really about money. It was revenge. Horst Borsodi, the man who ruled the auction house like a king, is finally dragged down into the same darkness where he buried his family's sins. The brothers tear each other apart over inheritance, betrayal, and the last remains of Maximilian Borsodi's will. For them, the vault is not a treasure room. It is a grave for everything their family used to be. But Geralt is not there to save the Borsodis from themselves. He is there for the house, and the house is not a building at all. It is a small model, a hidden container for a will, a symbol of a family destroyed by greed. Algierd knew exactly what he was asking for. He knew Geralt would have to walk into that family's hatred to retrieve it. Another wish is fulfilled. But by now, Geralt understands the pattern. Algierd does not ask for impossible things because he needs them. He asks because every wish forces someone to suffer. Then comes the final wish. Algierd asks for the violet rose he once gave to his wife, Iris. To find it, Geralt travels to the Von Everec estate, and the moment he arrives, the story changes again. The house is dead, not abandoned but haunted by grief. The walls feel heavy, the garden is rotting, and something monstrous moves through the grounds like a servant still guarding a home whose owners are long gone. This is where Hearts of Stone stops being a story about clever contracts and becomes something much sadder. Geralt enters the remains of Algierd's marriage. Inside the estate, he finds echoes of Iris von Everec, a woman trapped between memory, nightmare, and sorrow. To understand what happened, Geralt is pulled into a painted world, a place made from Iris's memories. Each scene shows another piece of the truth: love that slowly turned cold, promises that became chains, and a husband who changed after making a deal with Gaunter O'Dim. Algierd once wanted everything: wealth, power, immortality, the chance to save his family's fortune and keep the woman he loved. But O'Dim's gifts came with a price. Algierd became impossible to kill, but also impossible to reach. His heart turned to stone, not literally at first, but in every way that mattered. He could stand in fire, survive wounds, laugh at death, but he could no longer love Iris the way he once had. And Iris, trapped in a marriage with a man who looked like her husband but no longer felt like him, slowly withered inside that house. The violet rose was the last symbol of what they had been, the last living piece of a love that had already died. When Geralt finally understands this, Algierd stops looking like a villain and starts looking like something worse, a man who won every bargain and still lost everything. Geralt takes the rose, but the victory feels empty. Iris is freed from the prison of memory, and Algierd's final wish is complete. Now nothing stands between him and Gaunter O'Dim. The meeting is set at the Temple of Lilvani. Algierd believes the contract is finished. 3 wishes have been fulfilled. The terms are complete. But with O'Dim, the end of a bargain is never freedom. It is the moment the trap closes. Gaunter O'Dim reveals what he truly is. Not a merchant, not a mage, not just a mysterious wanderer who appears at convenient times. He is something older, crueler, and far more dangerous, a being who plays with human desire and turns every wish into a weapon. Algierd thought he could outsmart him. He was wrong. O'Dim comes to collect Algierd's soul. And for the first time, Algierd von Everec, the immortal, arrogant, fearless man with a heart of stone, looks afraid. Geralt has a choice. He can step aside and let the contract end. Algierd made the deal. Algierd paid the price. Maybe this is justice. But Geralt has seen too much. He has seen Vladimir's stolen knight. He has seen the Borsodi family destroy itself. He has seen Iris trapped in the ruins of a love that O'Dim helped corrupt. So Geralt challenges Master Mirror, not with a sword, not with signs, but with a riddle. O'Dim accepts because pride is the one thing even devils cannot resist. He pulls Geralt into his own world, a twisted nightmare where time runs out, paths break apart, mirrors lie, and every step is designed to make him fail. The rules are simple: solve the riddle before time ends or lose everything. Geralt runs through the impossible world, chasing the answer while O'Dim's voice follows him like a curse. The solution is hidden in the one thing Master Mirror cannot resist: a reflection. Water becomes the mirror, the riddle breaks, and for the first time Gaunter O'Dim loses. He screams, vanishes, and the contract is broken. Algierd is free, but freedom does not return what he lost. Iris is gone. Vladimir is gone. His family, his love, his old life, all of it is ashes. What remains is only a man who can finally feel again, forced to live with the weight of everything he did when he could not. Algierd gives Geralt his sword, not as payment for a simple job, but as the last gesture of a man who has been dragged back from the edge of damnation. And Geralt leaves him there, no longer immortal, no longer untouchable, no longer heartless. Just human. Hearts of Stone ends not with a kingdom saved or a monster slain, but with a warning. The most dangerous curses are not always cast by witches. Sometimes they begin with a wish. And sometimes the devil does not take your soul by force. He waits until you offer it yourself. After everything Geralt has survived, blood and wine begins almost like a reward. No burning battlefields, no freezing swamps, no haunted castles buried under rain. This time the road leads south to Toussaint, a land of vineyards, bright banners, golden hills, and knights who speak of honor as if the world has not spent years proving how fragile honor really is. Geralt is called there by two knights, Pomerin and Milton. They do not come asking for a simple monster hunt. They come on behalf of Duchess Anna Henrietta herself. Something is killing the noble knights of Toussaint, and whatever it is, it does not kill like a beast hunting for food. It chooses its victims. It leaves messages. It turns murder into performance. The people call it the Beast of Beauclair. For a witcher, that name means nothing yet. Names come later. First come tracks, blood, wounds, bodies, and the small details frightened men usually miss. So Geralt accepts the contract and rides into Toussaint, expecting a monster. But Toussaint does not introduce itself quietly. Almost as soon as Geralt enters the duchy, the land of wine and song throws a giant into his path. A knight is locked in battle with Goliath, a massive creature towering over the road like a fairy tale given flesh and anger. It is absurd, dangerous, and almost theatrical, exactly the kind of welcome Toussaint would give a witcher. Geralt kills the giant, and for a moment the knights see what kind of man they have summoned. Not a court champion, not a romantic hero, a professional. Someone who does not care how beautiful the legend sounds when the monster is trying to crush people under its feet. But Goliath is only the beginning. Milton leads Geralt to the place where one of the beast's victims was found. The trail takes them to the riverbank, where the bright beauty of Toussaint begins to crack. Beneath the sun and flowers there is blood, torn cloth, strange marks, signs that the killer is not some mindless creature wandering from victim to victim. There is purpose here. Geralt searches the water and finds a handkerchief marked with initials, a clue small enough to be missed by soldiers, but enough for a witcher to follow. The investigation points toward Corvo Bianco, an old vineyard where the body was taken. And there, the dream of Toussaint becomes a massacre. The vineyard is silent except for the aftermath of violence. Bodies lie scattered around the estate. Guards have been torn apart. Something moved through this place with speed, hunger, and terrifying precision. At first it looks like the beast has struck again, but Geralt knows better than to trust the first answer. The wounds, the movement, the signs around the corpses, all of it points to a vampire. Not the beast itself, but a Bruxa, hiding in the cellar beneath Corvo Bianco. The monster is fast, beautiful, and deadly, more like a nightmare wearing a woman's shape than a simple creature of the night. Geralt enters the cellar and finds her. She does not beg. She does not explain. She attacks. The fight is brutal and close, steel against claws, signs against speed, a witcher trying to pin down something that moves almost faster than sight, but Geralt kills her. And when he examines the real victim, the truth becomes stranger. The Bruxa was not the murderer they came for. She was feeding on the corpse, drawn there by something else. The beast is still out there, still choosing victims, still moving ahead of them. Geralt is taken to meet the woman who summoned him, Duchess Anna Henrietta. And if Toussaint is a fairy tale, then Anna Henrietta is its queen. Proud, sharp, dramatic, and completely certain that her duchy is the center of the world. She does not treat the murders as distant politics. These were her knights, men bound to her court, her traditions, and her honor. To her, the beast is not only killing people, it is insulting Toussaint itself. At the tourney grounds, Geralt sees the strange heart of this land. While blood stains the duchy, knights still compete in games, crowds still cheer, banners still fly, and everyone tries to pretend that ceremony can keep fear away. Then even the tournament turns dangerous. A Shelmar is released into the arena, blind, armored, and furious. The crowd came for spectacle, but the creature turns spectacle into threat. Geralt steps in again, fighting another monster in front of nobles who still do not understand the difference between a tournament and survival. After the arena, Geralt and Anna Henrietta put the clues together. The beast is not killing randomly. The victims are connected. The next target is Milton. But Milton is already part of a palace game, hidden somewhere in the gardens during a playful court tradition. Once again, Toussaint dresses danger in beauty. While everyone else thinks in riddles, games, and pageantry, Geralt sees the truth clearly. If they do not find Milton quickly, the beast will reach him first. The search becomes a race. Through gardens, water, masks, flowers, and noble distractions, Geralt follows the clues. The golden fish, the unicorn. The strange rules of a duchess who can turn even an investigation into theater. But beneath all of it, time is running out. And when Geralt finally reaches Milton, he is too late. The beast has already found him. The murder is fast, precise, and personal. No animal rage. No feeding frenzy. The killer strikes like someone carrying out a sentence. And this time, Geralt is close enough to chase him. The hunt tears through Beauclair. Past stone streets, shadows, and shocked witnesses, Geralt follows the murderer through the city until the trail leads into an abandoned storehouse. There is nowhere left to run. No crowd, no court, no duchess, no banners, only the Witcher and the thing that has been turning Toussaint's legends into corpses. And then Geralt finally sees him, not a mindless beast. Not a monster lost in bloodlust. A man-shaped nightmare with claws in his hands, death in his eyes, and enough control to speak before he kills. This is the beast of Beauclair. And for the first time in Toussaint, Geralt understands that this contract is not about hunting a monster. It is about uncovering why the monster is killing. Milton dies before Geralt can save him. The beast strikes in front of him, not like an animal, not like a creature lost in hunger, but like an executioner carrying out a sentence. The murder is fast, personal, and deliberate. And for the first time since arriving in Toussaint, Geralt is close enough to chase the killer. The hunt tears through Beauclair. Through streets, shadows, rooftops, and terrified witnesses, Geralt follows the beast until the trail leads into an abandoned warehouse. There is no duchess here. No knights, no banners, no songs about honor. Only blood, dust, and the thing that has been turning Toussaint's fairy tale into a nightmare. And then Geralt faces him. The beast is faster than anything a normal monster should be. He moves like death given a human shape, tearing through the fight with claws, speed, and strength that even a witcher can barely match. Geralt is not fighting some cursed beast from the woods. He is fighting something older, smarter, and far more dangerous. For a moment it looks like the hunt will end here, but before the beast can finish him, another vampire appears. Regis. A friend Geralt thought he would never see again. Regis stops the fight and the beast escapes. But instead of giving Geralt a clean answer, Regis makes the mystery worse. He knows the killer. He knows his name. The Beast of Beauclair is Detlaf van der Ereting, a higher vampire, and not just any higher vampire. He is the one who helped Regis return after his own death. That changes everything. Because if Detlaf is truly the killer, then this is no longer a simple contract. Higher vampires do not think like common monsters. They do not kill by instinct alone. If Detlaf is murdering knights across Toussaint, then something is forcing his hand or something has broken inside him. Regis believes there must be a reason. Geralt cannot ignore the bodies. Regis cannot ignore the debt he owes Detlaf. And between them stands the truth. The beast is not only a monster to be slain. He is someone Regis knows, someone Regis understands, and maybe someone Regis still hopes can be saved. To find him, they need more than tracks. They need memories. Regis leads Geralt to his hidden refuge beneath the cemetery, and there, surrounded by old stone, books, and the silence of the dead, he explains the plan. Detlaf left traces behind. With the right potion, Regis can use those traces to see what Detlaf saw, feel what he felt, and uncover the reason behind the murders. But the potion requires rare ingredients. One of them leads Geralt to a ruined estate, where a creature from old legend still lives among spoons, dust, and a curse that has outlasted everyone who once lived there. The Spotted Wight is not just another monster. It is a tragedy locked in repetition, a creature shaped by hunger, punishment, and loneliness. Geralt can kill it, but he can also listen. In this land, curses often hide behind beauty. But here, in a ruined house filled with spoons and whispers, Geralt sees the opposite, a monster that might still have a person buried somewhere underneath. He breaks the curse, takes what he needs, and leaves behind one more reminder that not every monster deserves the sword first. But the potion still needs vampire blood. For that, Regis takes Geralt to Teshem Mutna, a place where the history of vampires in Toussaint is written in stone, cages, and old cruelty. This is not a palace, not a vineyard, not a knightly legend. It is a ruin of hunger and power, a reminder that the beautiful duchy was built beside things it never truly understood. There, Regis does what he fears most. He lets the vampire inside him rise. Monsters are lured in. Blood is spilled. The fight pushes Regis closer and closer to the edge, until the calm, gentle man Geralt knows begins to disappear beneath something ancient and terrifying. For a moment, Geralt sees what Regis keeps buried every day, the predator, the hunger, the part of him that could destroy everything around him if he ever stopped fighting himself. They get the blood, but the price is seeing just how thin the line really is. Back at the cemetery, the potion is brewed. Regis drinks and Detlaf's memories begin to surface. And finally, the beast becomes more than a shadow. Detlaf was not killing for pleasure. He was being controlled. Someone had taken the woman he loved and used her as a chain around his neck. Every murder, every night, every corpse left behind in Toussaint was part of a blackmail. Detlaf was not choosing victims at random. He was being given names. The beast was a weapon, but someone else was holding the leash. The trail leads Geralt and Regis into the city, to a bootblack who knows more than a child should know, and then to Detlaf's hideout. There, among signs of obsession, grief, and desperation, they find proof that the vampire was being manipulated. Letters, instructions, a missing woman, a plan hidden beneath the murders, and one clue matters most: a wine stain. Small, almost ridiculous compared to all the blood already spilled. But in Toussaint, wine is never just wine. It is status, history, law, and identity. A single stain can point where swords and witnesses cannot. So Geralt takes the clue back to the palace. Anna Henrietta wants answers. To her, this investigation has already taken too long. Her knights are dead, her duchy is afraid, and the famous Witcher still has not brought her the beast's head. But Geralt tells her the truth. The case is no longer simple. Detlef is not just killing, he is being forced. The Duchess listens, but she does not like what she hears. Then the wine stain changes everything. The ducal sommelier identifies it as Sangreal, a wine reserved for the ducal family itself, produced only at Castel Ravello. Suddenly, the blackmail is no longer some distant criminal plot. It reaches into the heart of Toussaint's court, into the Duchess's own world. Anna Henrietta makes her decision immediately. She will go to Castel Ravello herself. Damien objects. Protocol, danger, politics, all the things that should matter to a ruler. But Anna Henrietta is not asking permission. For this mission, she releases him from court formality. No more Your Grace. No more distance. From now on, she is simply Anna Henrietta. And with that, the investigation leaves the palace behind. Geralt, Damien, and Anna ride out together, following the wine-stained clue toward the vineyard. The beast is no longer the only mystery. Now the question is, who in Toussaint is powerful enough to command a monster? The wine-stained letter leads Geralt away from the corpse and toward the court itself. Until now, the beast of Beauclair looked like the center of the mystery. A higher vampire killing knights, a monster striking from the shadows, a nightmare wearing the shape of a man. But the Sangreal wine changes everything. This is not some random clue left by a careless criminal. Sangreal is a ducal wine, reserved for Anna Henrietta's own family. If it reached the blackmailer, then the conspiracy is not outside Toussaint. It is inside the world of the Duchess herself. Anna Henrietta refuses to wait behind palace walls. Against every warning, she rides with Geralt and Damien to Castel Ravello, where the wine is produced. There, beneath the beauty of the vineyards, they uncover a crime hidden behind barrels, seals, and official smiles. Someone has been stealing Sangreal. Someone sold a wine that should never have left ducal control. And in Toussaint, wine is not just a drink. It is power. It is status. It is a signature. The stolen wine points to a man known as the Centurion, a guest moving through Beauclair's high society while the murders continue outside the ballroom. Geralt follows the trail into a world of masks, perfumes, music, and polished lies. The duchy is still trying to act like a fairy tale, but now the fairy tale is bleeding through the floorboards. At a grand celebration, Geralt searches for the Centurion among nobles who smile too easily and hide too much. The man is not a warrior, not a monster, not someone who looks dangerous at first glance, but he is connected to the letters, to the wine, and to the person controlling Detlef. Then the trail leads upward, away from the dancing and into the rooms where the masks finally fall. The Centurion is found dead. Once again, Geralt arrives too late to question the man who might have explained everything. But death does not erase evidence. The room still speaks. The body, the objects, the signs of struggle, the stolen jewels, all of it tells Geralt that the blackmail was never simple. The Centurion was only one piece of a larger plan. And then the truth begins to turn towards someone Anna Henrietta hoped never to face again. Sienna, the Duchess's lost sister. A woman erased from court, pushed out of Toussaint, and remembered by those who stayed behind only as a scandal, a curse, and a wound the royal family tried to bury. But buried things do not always stay buried. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they grow sharper in the dark. The trail leads to Dun Tin. By then, the investigation is no longer only about catching the beast. Geralt, Regis, Damien, and the Duchess's soldiers are moving toward the place where the missing woman is being held, the woman Detlef believes he is killing for. If they find her, they may finally understand who gave the orders, who named the victims, and why the beast was forced to slaughter Toussaint's knights. The assault begins like a military operation. No riddles, no courtly games, no wine cellars or masquerades. Just soldiers, steel, and a castle held by men who know they are cornered. Damien's troops move in. Geralt cuts through guards. Regis follows the blood trail from the shadows, calm and dangerous, a vampire walking beside men who would fear him if they knew what he really was. The deeper they push into Dun Tin, the clearer it becomes that this place is not the heart of the mystery. It is the door before it. Roderick, wounded and broken, reveals what he knows. The woman Detlef loves is here. The blackmail is real. But the story everyone has been following is still missing its final piece. Then Geralt finds her, the hostage, the woman Detlef knew as Renaud, and in that moment everything collapses. She is not merely a victim. She is Sienna, Anna Henrietta's sister. The woman Detlef loved, the woman he believed had been kidnapped, the woman whose letters drove him to murder, all of it was built around her. She was not just being used by the blackmailer. She was the one behind the blackmail. Sienna did not need Detlef because she loved him. She needed him because he was powerful enough to kill the men she hated. The murdered knights were not random. They were connected to her exile, to the childhood cruelty and betrayal that shaped her life after she was cast out. To Anna Henrietta, Sienna is a lost sister. To Toussaint, she is a dangerous secret returned from the past. To Detlef, she is the woman who turned his love into a weapon. And when Detlef learns the truth, something inside him breaks. He was not only manipulated, he was humiliated. Every murder, every risk, every step into blood, all of it was for a woman who lied to him from the beginning. His grief turns into rage, and his rage becomes a threat that no knight in Toussaint can answer. Detlef gives Anna Henrietta a demand. Bring Sienna to him, or Beauclair will drown in blood. Anna refuses. She will not hand over her sister no matter what Sienna has done. Maybe it is love, maybe guilt, maybe pride, maybe all of it at once. But the decision is made and the city has to pay for it. For 3 days Toussaint waits. No victory, no peace, no clean ending after the castle assault, only silence before punishment. Then Detlef keeps his word. The night falls over Beauclair and the fairy tale finally dies. Vampires descend on the city. Not one monster. Not one beast hiding in the dark. A swarm. Bruxy, Fletters, Garkins, things from old nightmares tearing through streets that once belonged to music, wine, and banners. The capital becomes a battlefield, and the people of Toussaint learn that legends are beautiful only when they are far away. Geralt is summoned again, but this time there is no mystery left to follow. There is only a city under attack, and somewhere beyond the screams, Detlef is waiting. While Beauclair burns outside the palace walls, Geralt finds the answer hidden in a children's room. Not in a battlefield, not in a vampire's lair, not in a royal archive guarded by soldiers, but in a notebook left behind by a governess, a quiet record of 2 sisters who grew up inside the same palace but were never truly given the same life. Anna Henrietta was the beloved child, the future duchess, the golden daughter of Toussaint. Sienna was something else. A child marked by superstition, feared because of a curse people barely understood, blamed for things she had not yet done, and slowly pushed out of the family that should have protected her. The more Geralt reads, the clearer it becomes that the massacre in Beauclair did not begin with Detlef. It began years ago, with a child abandoned by her own blood. The book opens the path to a place that should not exist anymore, a magical world built from fairy tales, created for the daughters of Toussaint when they were young. But like everything in blood and wine, the beauty hides something darker underneath. Geralt steps into the land of 1,000 fables. At first, it looks almost impossible. Bright colors, impossible castles, talking creatures, stories given flesh. After the blood and screams of Beauclair, the place feels like a dream. But it does not take long for the dream to turn sharp. These fairy tales have rotted. The stories are broken, twisted, and dangerous. And somewhere inside this beautiful nightmare is Sienna. When Geralt finds her, she is not the helpless victim everyone believed her to be. She is angry, wounded, and completely aware of what she has done. She used Detlef because he loved her. She gave him names. She turned his devotion into a weapon and aimed it at the knights she blamed for her exile. But Sienna is not just a villain. She is what happens when pain is left alone long enough to become a plan. Geralt travels with her through the fairy tale world, and every step reveals more of the girl behind the revenge. The monsters here are absurd, almost childish witches, wolves, giants, stories that once belonged to bedtime tales. But through Sienna, they become something sadder. This place was built for children who were supposed to be safe. Now it has become a prison for the sister no one wanted to remember. To escape, they need the magic beans and the path to the giant's castle. But before leaving, Geralt finds one small thing that matters more than it seems: Sienna's ribbon. A childhood keepsake, a piece of protection, a tiny object that once belonged to a girl before she became a weapon. With the ribbon recovered, Geralt and Sienna climb out of the fairy tale and return to a world that is even more dangerous, because Dettlaff is waiting. At Tesh Mutna, the story finally strips away every mask. No court. No games. No riddles. No pretty vineyards. Only old stone, blood, vampires, and the meeting that should have happened before Beauclair was ever attacked. Dettlaff sees Sienna. For a moment, everything depends on whether love, betrayal, rage, and grief can fit inside the same silence. Then he moves. Dettlaff tries to kill her instantly, not because he does not understand what happened, but because he understands too well. He was lied to, used, humiliated. The woman he thought he was saving was the one holding the leash. His murders were real, but his reasons were built on her deception. But the ribbon saves Sienna. She vanishes before Dettlaff can finish her, and the last thread holding him back finally snaps. There is no more investigation now, only the beast. Dettlaff attacks with everything he is, not like a man, not like a common vampire, but like a nightmare that has decided the world deserves to bleed. Geralt fights him through blood, wings, claws, and fury. It is one of the hardest battles he has ever faced, because Dettlaff is not just powerful. He is broken beyond reach, and when Geralt finally defeats him, even that is not enough. A witcher can beat a higher vampire, but only another higher vampire can truly end one. So Regis does what Geralt cannot. He kills the friend who once saved him. There is no victory in it, no triumph, no clean justice. Dettlaff murdered innocents and drowned Beauclair in blood, but Regis still loses someone who mattered to him. Blood and wine gives Geralt the monster's death, but it does not let anyone pretend the ending is simple. The city survives, Sienna survives, but the last secret still remains. During the ceremony, Toussaint wants to celebrate Geralt as a hero. Anna Henrietta prepares to honor him. The court gathers, and the duchy tries to dress the horror in medals, speeches, and ceremony. But Regis sees what others almost miss. There was supposed to be one more victim, a fifth name. And when Geralt follows that final thread, the truth becomes clear. Sienna's revenge was not finished. Her last target was Anna Henrietta herself, her own sister. That is the real ending of the curse. Not Dettlaff, not the beast, not even the massacre. The deepest wound in Toussaint has always been between two sisters, one who was loved and one who was cast away. Geralt speaks to Sienna before the ceremony. He does not excuse her crimes. He does not pretend she is innocent. But he forces her to look at the truth beneath the revenge, that she wanted Anna to understand her pain, and maybe, beneath all the hatred, she still wanted her sister to choose her. Then Sienna stands before Anna Henrietta. For a moment, the whole ending balances on a few words. The Duchess sees the criminal, the exile, the woman responsible for blood in her city, but she also sees her sister. And Sienna, after years of rage, finally lets the mask fall. The two sisters embrace. It does not erase the dead. It does not make Sienna innocent. It does not bring back the knights, the civilians, or the peace Dettlaff destroyed. But it ends the chain before one more murder can happen. Toussaint survives its own fairy tale. Geralt receives his reward, but by now the coin almost means nothing. He has seen the truth behind the shining duchy. The wine, the songs, the knights, the pageantry, all of it was real, but so was the cruelty hidden underneath. Toussaint was never pure. It was only beautiful enough to make people forget its shadows. Then comes the final goodbye. Regis cannot stay. By killing Detlef, he has broken something among his own kind. The friend who helped save him is dead by his hand, and the vampires of this land will not forgive him for it. So he leaves, carrying both guilt and acceptance. Geralt sits with him one last time. Two old friends, both tired, both changed, both knowing that some endings cannot be made clean. Regis asks if all of it was worth it, and Geralt has no perfect answer. He rarely does. He only knows that Beauclair still stands, Anna and Sienna are alive, and Detlef's bloodshed has ended. For a Witcher, sometimes that has to be enough. And then after vampires, curses, fairy tales, betrayals, and blood, Geralt returns home. Corvo Bianco is quiet. No screaming city. No monster contract. No Duchess demanding answers. Just sunlight, vines, stone walls, and a place that finally belongs to him. For most of his life, Geralt has moved from road to road, contract to contract, war to war. He has been called mutant, butcher, freak, savior, killer, hero, usually by people who needed him and feared him at the same time. But here at the end, none of those names matter. He is simply Geralt, and for once the world does not pull him away. Someone is waiting for him at Corvo Bianco, a final reminder of the life he built beyond swords and monsters. Not a new war, not a new prophecy. Just a quiet visit, a conversation, and the feeling that maybe, after everything, the Witcher has earned a little peace. Blood and Wine ends where the Witcher always wanted to end. Not with the death of a monster, not with a throne, not with destiny, but with Geralt of Rivia finally coming home,